Start streaming on YouTube as well. Okay, yeah, I see some people are seeing us on Facebook, so we're live on Facebook.
That's a good thing. That's very good.
All right, guys, can you
I
hear?
like being live
Let
on
us know
Facebook.
if you have audio.
Yep.
Hey,
Can
everyone.
everybody hear me?
Ali, can you say
Yep.
something?
We're online. We're live.
All right, great,
We
perfect.
are. Okay,
Yeah,
my
I
face
think.
is scrunched up to one side of things, but
What should I do?
can you
Should
move
I?
the thing? I'm
Okay.
not centered.
All right, I'll center you. Hold on, guys. Let us know how the audio
Yeah.
is while I center Ali. Oh yeah, I.
Yeah. And I'm in my um,
There we go.
I'm in Lishma's photo studio right now. So
All right, Mike is saying
yeah.
sounds good. Oh, I see Yuval on
All right.
Facebook. He's saying secular jihadists. Salam
Hi
alaikum. Audio is
everybody.
good. Hello, guys. Soraya is saying, yep, good to go. Beej is saying, we hear you. Mutt is saying, all good. Mike is here. Moose is saying, I have some bad news. Patreon disabled my account. I am no longer able to say.
We'll get to that. Let's
Okay.
start the episode and then.
All right, go on, Ellie.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatul arminu wa barakatuhu. This is peace and blessings of Armin be upon you, everybody. My name is Ali Rizvi. I have a sore throat. I just came off like a really, really bad cold. So excuse me. I might sound sexier. I don't know, but I definitely don't look it. And with me is Armin Navabi, as always.
Hi,
Wonderful
guys.
Armin Navabi. Hi, how are you?
Hello. Ali, move a little
And
bit to your left.
like to my left,
That's
like
good.
that.
Yeah, stay there, right there. Okay, good.
Stay right there.
Yes.
Okay, great. This is for the so what Armin's telling me to do, he's telling me to move a little bit to the left so I show up on the video properly.
Right.
And for those of you who are listening to this on your podcast app, you're probably thinking video, what video? Well, what happens is if you become a patron of this podcast, you actually have access to all the videos. So we just one thing you can do is you can go to patreon.com/sjme. And that's where all our patrons can watch all the videos and they can get access to all this other sort of premium content.
Except the ones that is just you and me. Those are public for everyone. The ones
Those
with
are public. Like,
the ones that are with our guests, the videos for that is only available to our Patreons and also to our PayPal and Subscribe Star followers, supporters. But the ones that is just you and me is always public to everyone. Go ahead.
that's right. So that's the one thing. So remember, if you want to go, for those of you who've heard this podcast before and you like what you hear, you can go to Patreon. You can actually do your settings so you could subscribe for as little as $1 a month, and you can be part of it. We do have someone in the live chat, Muscal, is saying that she has lost her Patreon status. So for those who don't have that, you can also go to PayPal and
Go to secularjihadist.com.
join from there and then message us.
Yeah, secularjihadist.com.
And you have all of the options there.
Yeah. And
then once you get in,
Yeah, go
you can go to our Facebook group. We have a special group for patrons on Facebook. So it's called Secular Jihadist Patrons. Just join if you're a contributor, and then you get access to all the content over there. So
Right.
either way, you can all do it. Just wanted to get that out of the way ahead of time.
Yeah, Muska, go to secularjihadist.com. There's other ways other than Patreon. But thank you
Right.
for your support so far, anyways.
Okay, so today what we're doing is the second part of a conversation that I know Armin and I enjoyed a lot. The first. So this is part of a 3-part series. And this is about Sunni versus Shia. What's the differences between?
But you don't need to see the previous part to get this one because they're different. They're different aspects of the. The first one was the story, the difference in the stories. This one is the difference in theology and belief, and then the third one is going to be the difference in modern politics and stuff like that.
And how that's going, the differences between Sunnis and Shias. So even though you don't necessarily have to see the first part to go with this, I mean, this is totally standalone. I think you'll enjoy this also if you go and you check out the first part before and just really learn about we talked about the history of how the Shia and the Sunni sects developed during the lifetime of Muhammad, actually, and even afterwards. And I'll leave that as a teaser, and you can go and you can find out about it by listening to part 1. But again, I'm talking about, what did the terms mean? How did these sects arise? What are their differences? And why have they been at each other's throats for 13 centuries?
Yeah.
And, what exactly is going on? So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the differences in belief and the theological differences between the two sects.
By the way, can I give you a small recap on how I already mentioned this before. So the way I look at it, and I think Ali agrees with this, is that the Shia and Sunni divide started off as a family drama, then evolved into differences in politics. The family drama turned into differences in politics. Then the differences in politics then evolved into theological differences. And then the theological differences turned into different identity, right? So identity with regards to how Shias and Sunnis see themselves and each other. But go on.
And each other, yeah. And one important thing at the center of these some of these political differences is there's a big difference in successorship. So we'll start with that in terms of beliefs, because that crosses over. That's part of the history, and it also crosses over into the theological beliefs. So the main theological difference in terms of both Shia and Sunni is the sources of the Hadith. So we know that the Quran is the same for both of them. Muhammad is the last prophet that sends down the word of God, which is the Quran. But then after that, right, after the God, the Quran, and Muhammad, what happens afterwards? Afterwards, you have something called the Sunnah. So in addition to the Quran, you need these things called the Hadith, which is the behavior of the Prophet of Muhammad and what is to be emulated. And the reason this is important for all Muslims, Shia and Sunni alike, is because the Quran is very vague on certain things. Like the Quran will tell you to pray, but it doesn't specify exactly how many times a day you should pray. It doesn't tell you how you should pray. It tells you to fast, but it doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. So for those things and a whole bunch of other things, you need a separate body of literature, right, of a form of scripture, and that is called the Hadith or the Sunnah. And the main theological difference between Shia and Sunni is the source of the Hadith and Sunnah.
So
right?
actually, Ali, the way you're saying it, like, tell me if you disagree with this or not, because with my experience is that it seems like it's mostly Sunnis that say the Quran and Sunnah. The one Quran, Sunnah second. Most Shias don't say that. I mean, in my experience,
they don't use the word Sunnah.
Let me make the point. They say the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. The Quran and Ahlul Bayt. So they say Muhammad. So the Sunnis say the Muhammad brought two things for us. He brought the Quran, and the Sunnah as a way to figure out how to interpret the Quran. But Shias, they say no. They say Muhammad brought the Quran and he brought Ahlul Bayt, the people of the house. And so what does Ahlul Bayt mean? So, why do Shias refer to Ahlul Bayt and Sunnis don't?
Okay, so that's a good point of clarification, but it also comes down to the same thing, that the Ahlul Bayt is where Shias get their so let's avoid the terms Sunnah or even Hadith. Okay, let's look at how do you the things that are said to you in the Quran, the elements of the belief, the tenets of the belief, how are you supposed to practice them? The instructions for that, right? For the Sunni, they come from the Sunnah and the Hadith. Those are the 6 major books, Bukhari, Muslim, the collection of traditions of Muhammad recorded by his companions, orally transmitted, and then compiled by these people who had lived 2 centuries after him, right, in books like Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, right? So that is the source of where they get their idea of Sunni, get their idea of how to practice Islam.
And
for
Sunnah,
Shia,
what does Sunnah
right?
mean? Sunnah means the way of the the saying,
the way of the Prophet.
The way of the Prophet, whether it's what he did or what he said, right?
Right.
But Shias, yeah.
Okay, so what the Shia do is the Shia, they get their source, they get their guidance on how to practice their religion, right? The equivalent of the Sunnah or the Hadith for them is the Ahlul Bayt. The Ahlul Bayt means people of the house, specifically the family members of Muhammad. The house is Muhammad's house, his family, and they're the people of the house. People of the house includes, as we mentioned in our last episode, generally his biological descendants and relatives. So his daughter, the only surviving daughter that he had, who survived his death, was Fatima. Her husband Ali, who also happened to be his cousin, and then their children and their children and their children, down several generations.
Right.
So those are that, and whatever they said, however they interpreted the practices of Muhammad, right, is what the Shia follow.
So the
Now,
Shias
do they?
So the Shias would say that the Sunnis are missing half of Islam. So the Shias say the Sunnis accepted the Quran, which is half of Islam, but they missed out on the other half, which is Ahlul Bayt. They did not recognize Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Fatima, and all their children after that, the 12 Imams. They didn't recognize them as more than so some Sunnis recognize some of these Imams as authority, but not divine authority, right? But Shias, they say they are divine authority, and by not recognizing them as divine authority, you're missing half of Islam.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So now the question is, why do they go with the Ahlul Bayt? Or do they go with the family of Muhammad because they think that family members know you best, right? If I want to know about Armin long after he's died, I'm going to go and look at the writings of his brothers and sisters and his kids and everything as the way they remember him. I would, like, Shias believe that is the most authentic way to understand the traditions of a person. So they have, this is their view. So they largely reject the Sunni sources of Hadith, even though there is a lot of crossover.
Right. There's some, right? Yeah. So there's some of the okay, but let's just mention the counterpoint Sunnis bring to that. Sunnis say that Muhammad came to redo the way that we do everything, including government and including, running a society, and having a leader, and then the ones that we follow after that leader to be by blood, like your children, and then the children of your children, like the way the Shias do it. That's the way monarchs do it. That's not the way Islam should be doing it. Like they say that's the way the kings do it, right?
Yeah, they think it's like a dynasty.
Yeah,
right?
They're like, this is not what
they don't want it to be.
This is not what Muhammad. They say the Shias are acting like this is a dynasty. It's like, why would you think that somebody that is your son should be your leader? Like, that's not Sunnis think that they're more democratic.
Nepotism.
Yeah, they think that. Yeah. Sunnis think like yeah. Sunnis think Abu Bakr, when Muhammad died, like Abu Bakr and Omar, they were selected by the community of Muslims, and Muhammad said the community will never make a mistake. My community, my ummah, will never make a mistake. And the Sunnis point to that as a way to say, well, therefore Abu Bakr, Omar, and Osman were the rightly, and then Ali were the right Khalifas, and they were not supposed to be by blood. So the Shias got it completely wrong. But Shias point, well, Muhammad himself said that I give you the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. So no, you're wrong, because that's what Muhammad said. Do Sunnis think that when Muhammad said Ahlul Bayt, people of the house, maybe Muhammad wasn't referring to Ali, Hassan, and Hussein? Maybe he was referring to his wives, because the Shias hate many of Muhammad's wives, including Aisha.
So I'm going to say this as someone who grew up Shia, was heavily biased towards Shia. I still think that the Shia are a lot clearer on some of their theology than Sunnis are in a lot of ways.
Really?
But I will say that on this, the Shias are dead wrong and the Sunnis are completely right. The verse in the Quran where the Ahlul Bayt is mentioned, right, is Surah 33, verse 33. This is called Ayat al-Tathir by a lot of Shias. And then this is how it reads. I've got it in front of me. It says, "And abide in your houses and do not display yourselves as was the display of the former times of ignorance. Establish prayer and give zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Allah intends only to remove from you the impurity of sin, O Ahlul Bayt, to purify you with purification." So this idea that the impurity of sin does not exist in the Ahlul Bayt, right? That they're divine. This is the source that the Shia get it from. Unfortunately, if you look at this entire, the whole thing, Surah 33, this is all about the wives of the Prophet. All the verses before
No
this,
way.
all wives of the Prophet. Yep, all of it. So like, this is, the thing about the jilbab and, cover yourselves when you go out in public. This is part of that entire verse.
Right.
So this is actually specifically, and actually just for clarity, and I want to do this in case there are some sort of Shias who are listening to this, because this is actually really important. There's a fundamental kind of thing, difference between the two. So what I read to you right now was 33:33. Okay.
Right.
33:28. O Prophet, say to your wives, if you desire the worldly life, blah blah blah. 33:29. But if you desire Allah and His Messenger. Okay. So again, 33:30. O wives of the Prophet, whoever of you should commit an immorality, your punishment will be double-fold. And whoever you obeys, their reward will be double-fold. 33:32. O wives of the Prophet, you're not like anyone among women. 33:33, the one that we're talking about, and abide in your houses.
So this is a huge disagreement. So what does Ahlul Bayt mean is different from Shia to Sunni. When the Quran says the people of the house, the Shias think that God meant Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Hussein, and everybody that was born from these from the union of Ali and Fatima. But so the daughter of Muhammad and his son-in-law, but what Sunnis think is that all the wives of the Muhammad, that's what Quran means when it refers to Ahlul Bayt. Is that correct, Ali?
Yes, that is correct. And the verse in question, again, is the only place in the entire Quran that the term Ahlul Bayt is mentioned is Surah 33, verse 33. And that is a continuation of a whole bunch of verses that are directed to wives of the Prophet. So there's the Sunni interpretation that this is Ahlul Bayt in this verse means the wives is actually much more plausible and makes a lot more sense than the Shia interpretation.
But the Sunnis don't take Ahlul Bayt that seriously. It's not that important to them, right? It's Muhammad.
No, not as that.
Not as
what
important.
They would do is, when I would give them the example when I was younger, as a Shia believer, and I used to tell them, I'm like, listen, who would know Muhammad better? Like a bunch of Sahaba who just hung out with him for a couple of years, a few months, and wrote down stuff, or his family members who lived with him, knew what he was like, who grew up with him. Then they tell me, they'd be like, who the other family members were? Abu Lahab and Abu Jahal, his uncles.
Right.
So his family, blood doesn't mean anything in Islam.
So blood doesn't mean anything in Islam is a very anti-Shia thing to say.
That is, completely.
So let me actually, so the podcast people will not be able to see this, but I have a Quran right now in front of me, and one thing you notice about the Quran is that it's a very small book, right? It's not that much in there, right? Most of Islam comes from the Hadith and the Tafseer, and also the biography of Muhammad, right? And compared to the Quran, which is a very small book, those are, you could fill libraries with those, right? So they're like, just the Hadith Bukhari is like such a huge volume of books. And then you have 6 sources of Hadith, which is the sayings of either Muhammad, or for Shias, the saying of both Muhammad and also the 12 Imams. And you have 4, so you have 6 main books for Sunnis, and you have 4 main books for Shias. And then you have the Tafseer, which Tafseer means the commentary on the Quran, so that you could see, like, mentions what each one of these verses actually means, right, and what it's referring to. But the thing about the Tafseer is that the Tafseer relies on the Hadith to interpret the Quran, right? So you have the Hadith, and then you have the Tafseer, and you have the biography, and those together are much more text than the Quran is. And all of that text is responsible for their more laws and ways of living and ways of governing, way more than the Quran is itself. I mean, so the Quran is at the center, but how you view the Quran is all that text. So all that text around the Quran, where does it come from? And this is where the Sunnis and Shia are different. So the Quran, for them, is both for both of them is the same. But given that the Hadith, so given that the Shias believe in the 12 Imam and they have a lot other sources of Hadith than the Sunnis, and given that they have different sources, all that volume of text that is around the Quran is very different, and that makes their practices, their theology, and the way they look at the world and themselves very different. Even though the Quran is at the center of it, the way they look at the Quran is different because of the people that they listen to, the people that they see as authority on interpreting the Quran. Does that make sense, Hadi? You're muted. You're muted. You're still
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not muted anymore.
Yeah.
Apologies.
No.
I do have a cough and everything, so every time I cough, I try to mute myself. So
did
Armin's
that
ears
make
don't get blown up.
sense? Did that make
Yeah,
sense?
it did make sense. There are a couple of questions here from the patrons. So Adlock Hungry is asking, what's the Tafseer? Tafseer is exegesis. Like, you know how you have the Bible and then you have people who interpret the Bible. They go like verse by verse, passage by passage, and they talk about the historical context, what it meant, what the significance of it is. So it's an explanation of it. That you have a similar process with the Quran. So it's Quranic exegesis.
Yeah. So yeah.
Another.
There's three texts that you need to know. Had the Hadith. So other than the Quran, you have the Hadith, you have the Tafsir, and you have the biography. The Hadith is the saying of Muhammad. For Shias, is saying of Muhammad plus the Imams. The Tafsir is the commentary on the Quran and the interpretation of the Quran, and it uses the Hadith as a source to do the commentary. And then you have the biographies. The biographies, I don't know. Is there much difference in the biographies between for Shias and Sunnis? I don't think so.
Yeah, there are, but they're kind of minor. Like it really gets into the details. Like the actual details of them are different. But I think for the most part, a lot of the basics are the same. Like for instance, there's a Shia Sunni difference in how many daughters did Muhammad have, right? So the Sunnis, they believe that Khadija and Muhammad had several daughters. And with the Shia, they say that, you know, he only had one daughter, and if there were other ones from Khadija, they were stepdaughters that were from a previous husband or whatever. Right. So they're minor things like that. However,
so just for Sunnis, the main source of Hadith, so there's 6 books, right? There's 6 books, right? But the one that people mention the most as always the authority, like there's no mistakes in it, everything in it is sahih. Sahih means correct, like or something that you can rely on in Hadith, is the Sahih Muslim, Hadith Muslim, and Bukhari, right? Bukhari is even bigger than Sahih Muslim. So you have Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. For Shias, the main one I think is Kafi, which is weird because for most of my Shia life, I thought it was Nahj al-Balagha, but Nahj al-Balagha is just literally, like it's not like, it's mostly just Ali's writings. It's just the poetic ones rather than...
It's a sermons. It's a collection of his sermons.
Right, okay. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, you wanted to add something?
No, I think that's basically, it's a source of the source of where they get how to practice Islam. The Sunni get it from the books of the Hadith, like from Bukhari and Muslim and the rest, and the Shia get it from the Ahlul Bayt, which is the family of Muhammad and his descendants.
So what's the main difference? So the main difference that leads to the pillars, right? The 5 pillars.
Right.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So the 5 pillars, like there are in Shiism, you've got. So with the Sunni, you've heard of the 5 pillars. Everybody's heard of the Shahada, which is the declaration that there is no God but God and but Allah and Muhammad as his messenger. You have prayer, which is Salah, right? You pray 5 times a day. You've got Saum, which is fasting. So in the month of Ramadan, you fast from sunrise to sunset. There's Hajj, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca. You should do every year if you can. I mean, at least once in your lifetime, if you're able to, you should perform it. And the final one is zakat, which is a form of charity and almsgiving that Sunnis do. So those are consider the 5 pillars of Islam. And all of those are also part of Shiaism. But the Shia, the way that they break it down in terms of belief in their theology, is their actual quote-unquote pillars are something called the Usul al-Din. And the Usul al-Din, there are 2 things. The Usul al-Din, there's the Amal al-Din. So there's the beliefs of the religion, and then there's the practices of the religion. The practices of the religion are the same as the Sunni, right? The prayer and fasting and going to Hajj and almsgiving, charity. They also have another form of charity called khums. But the basic pillars for Shia Islam are called the Usul al-Din, and they are 5. The first one is Tawheed. Tawheed means that there's only one God, so you have to believe in the oneness of God. The second is Adl. Adl means belief in justice, the fact that Allah is just, and He's not going to do injustice to you. Debatable. And we'll editorialize later. The third one is Nabuwat, which means belief in all of the prophets. Nabi means a prophet. So these are the prophets and the messengers of God. Then the fourth one is Imamat, and this is belief in the descendants of Muhammad. So after Muhammad, there's Ali, and then after Ali, it's Hassan, Hussein. Some subsects don't believe in Hassan, but okay, Hussein, Zain al-Abidin, Muhammad Baqir, Jafar Sadiq, Musa Kazim, Ali Rida, Muhammad Taqi, Ali Naqi, Hassan Askari, and then Mahdi. Those are the ones for the mainstream version of Shia Islam, which is
we know there are Shias that believe in less imams than 12 imams, right? But like the Ismailis. But right now, when we mention Shia, we're talking about the mainstream Shia Islam, which is the 12er Shia Islam that believes in 12
if
imams.
Not Shari. Right. So hold on, let me just finish the pillars, and then the fifth one is Qiyamah. Qiyamah means the belief in the day of judgment, the day of resurrection, at the afterlife. Everybody's going to die, and then after that, there'll be a reckoning.
These 5 pillars in Shia and Sunni, they don't mean much, because all the 5 pillars of the Sunnis, Shias believe in it as well, and all the 5 pillars of Shias, Sunnis believe in those as well, except the imams, right? But so 4 of the 5 pillars of the Shias, Sunnis believe in it as well. So it's just what they pick to call their pillars. The interesting thing is that the Shias picked Tawheed, the oneness of God, as one of their main pillars. But this is exactly what Sunnis accuse Shias of missing. Okay,
right.
Because Sunnis claim that there's only one entity that is divine, and they consider divine, and that's God. They don't even see Muhammad as divine. It's just God that is divine and nothing else. But that's debatable, because the Quran, if the Quran is the uncreated word of God, then the Quran is divine as well, which challenges the concept of Tawheed, the oneness of God. But that's something that people fought over, the Mu'tazilites and stuff. But the Sunnis accuse Shias of seeing the 12 imams as holy and divine, and they're like, and to have partners to God is the greatest sin in Islam. To have partners to God is seen as shirk, and shirk is shirk is the greatest sin in Islam. And Shia say, no, we're not doing shirk because we don't worship these imams. But the Sunnis say it looks like it's worshiping. Like they say, is you're praying to them, you're kissing their shrines, and like for example, you see Shias pray sometimes to Imam Hussein, ask or
Ali,
or Ali. They go to the shrines of the imams, or even the children of the imams, the 12 imams, and they kiss the shrines, they pray to the shrines, and the Sunnis this is idol worship. You're worshiping the shrines, you're kissing objects, you are praying to something other than God, and this is exactly what is shirk. Like, if this is not shirk, then what the hell is shirk? Right? So the Sunnis say that the Shias missed the most important part of Islam is Tawheed, which is the oneness of God and having no partners to God, and the Sunnis say the Shias missed that entire point. But go on.
Right, and And the Shia view is that they say that they're consistent. They say no, every prayer that we may tell Hussein, we pray to Hussein to transmit a prayer to God, but ultimately the prayer is going to God. And everything that if we're praying at a shrine, right, we're going to pray at that shrine because we want to get, these are divinely guided imams. So we talk to them and they pass our prayer on to God. So the prayer is ultimately going there. The imam or the shrine that we're praying to is merely a vehicle. And then they also bring up, it's actually, I always found this interesting because they called it bid'ah or innovation, that the Shia pray to the imams and that it's idolatry if they go to shrines and everything. But, if you look at Hajj, that's like
Yeah.
kissing the black stone.
That's
The Hajr al-Aswad, I mean, all the Sunnis do it. They go and they're like
Right.
salivating over the black stone.
Right.
Shias and Sunnis alike, they're circling a black box that is obviously a huge thing. I mean, spending their life savings to go to Hajj so they can circle a black box, throwing stones at rocks at 3 pillars that are supposed to represent Satan, and people get trampled to death while they do that. So a lot of these things, there's like neither of these sects really have a lot of introspection into how a lot of their own practices are very similar to the others. It's kind of interesting.
Just a mini story. When I was a kid, when we first I lived in Iran, which is a Shia country, and when we first went to our first vacation to Dubai, which is in United Arab Emirates, which is a Sunni country, the UAE, I remember hearing the azan. First of all, I was very surprised to hear the azan like so many times, like 5 times instead of 3 times a day. But one thing that I noticed in the azan, as the azan is the call to prayer, which the mosque play over the loudspeakers for everybody to know it's time to pray. But the azan was missing a part that I was used to hearing in Iran. So it started the same way, but the part that, so it gets to the part that it says Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, which means I testify that Muhammad is the prophet of God. But then it skipped the part that we have in Iran, which says Ashhadu anna Ali and Waliullah, which also means that I testify that Ali is, how do you translate Wali to English? Ali is
I don't really know.
Ali is the agent of God.
Yeah, in a way, a representative. Let me just look that up, actually.
I think Wali would be, agent would be a good translation, I think. I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
Agent, Wali, Velayat.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, the adhan is different.
So it's missing. It's very interesting that it's missing that every call to prayer, the Shia and the Sunni call to prayer is different, and it's missing that part, which Ali, the first Imam of Shias, is not mentioned in the Sunni call to prayer, which shows how the differences in theology, it shows itself in all the different ways that they practice. Yeah, but do you want to mention some of the ways that practices are different between how these difference in theology, shows itself in practices?
Well, one of the ways it shows itself in practices is just that they want to, they just want to show that they're different. So, so one thing is they pray differently. Okay, the way that they do salat. So the Quran doesn't really have a specific consensus on how many times a day you should pray. So there are 5 prayers, separate prayers. So both Sunnis and Shia believe in that there are 5 major compulsory prayers. They are Fajr, which is early in the morning, at dawn, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Right. So the way that the Sunnis do it is Fajr is again crack of dawn, Dhuhr is during noon. Asr is the afternoon, Maghrib is during sunset, and then Isha is after sunset before you go to bed. Those are the 5 prayers.
But the Shias cheat. They turn it into 3.
Right. So what the Shia do is they have the same 5 prayers, but they do it at 3 times. So they'll do Fajr at the crack of dawn, like the Sunnis. Then they'll do Dhuhr and Asr together, right, in the afternoon. Then they'll do Maghrib and Isha together in the evening. So it's 3 times.
That saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, so what you do is you basically take the later time for when the Dhuhr time is ending, and the beginning time for Asr, and you do both of those together, and you do the same thing in Maghrib and Isha. But the prayers are valid as long as you do them within those three major time frames. So that's one difference, that they'll do it differently. The way that they pray is also different.
Which
So
Beach is asking in the live chat, so now you're going to answer that, yeah.
Right. So the way that the hands are placed, Beach is saying, is there a difference between where the hands are placed above or below the belly button? Within Sunnis, it can be either. So it can be across the chest. You can have one hand over the other, and across the chest. You can have it on the belly, which is what you see most of the time, on TV when you see Muslims praying. But the way that the Shia, the Ethnothri Shia pray, is they have their arms completely open to their sides. The reason for this is they believe that the infidels once, long time ago, they went into the mosque of Mecca in the Kaaba, and while they had their hands together and they had their hands tied, they had hidden small little tiny idols, like miniature idol gods, and then when they would go down into bowing, they would open up their hands and they'd leave the idols in the mosque. And to counter that, Muhammad said, "Okay, everybody, open up your arms and pray with your arms by your
really?
side."
I didn't know that story. Is this authentic Hadith, or is this?
No, this is just Shia Hadith. Shia, they don't have the sort of levels of authenticity the way the Sunnis do.
So actually, it's in school. Our religion teacher made fun of Sunnis, and I think he made the story up. I don't know if this is true or not, but they're like, Muav.
All of it's up.
I know. Anyway. Okay, yeah, but yes, all of it is made up. This is a different level of made up. Like, it's not even. I don't think this is even canon in Islam. We know. Okay, by the way, for the people, we know we're a bunch of atheists. We're saying which parts are made up. When we say this is made up,
we're talking about the belief, what they believe.
Yeah, no. So okay. So there's different levels of made up. As in, there are some things that is canon in Islam according to Shias and canon in Islam according to Sunnis. But even though all of that is still made up, there are Shias and Sunnis that go out and say stuff that is not even canon. You know what I mean? Like, they're just making stuff up even beyond what it was supposed to be agreed upon, made up fairy tales. You know what I mean? So yeah. So I'm just from a perspective of a Shia or Sunni, I'm saying this is made up, I think. Right? So our teacher said that Muawiyah, which was one Sunni leader, he looked at the Romans and saw that they stand like this with their hands together, and he liked it, so he just copied the Romans, and that's why Sunnis put their hands like this, because Muawiyah was copying the Romans. And they say this is why the way Sunnis pray is not Islamic, because they're just copying Romans. But another thing that is different is the way they do the wuzu, which is the washing that you do before, the spiritual washing with water that you do before you pray. The Shias, I think the Shias are lazy, because I just recently learned how to do the Sunni one. I was in Israel, and the Sunnis showed me how to do. I went to a mosque in Israel, and they
wash their feet every time.
No, yeah, and they put the water up their nose, and they wash their hand like a lot of. They put the water in their mouth and they spit it out 3 times, and it's a lot of work actually compared to the Shias. They just boom, 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 done, right? I think like a lot of the Shia version of both the prayer and the wuzu, it's just a lazy way. It's just a faster, more time efficient way of what the Sunnis do. But I guess the Sunnis would say that's just we're just cleaner. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. So. Okay, so here's a problem with that. So here, this is also a Quranic thing. This is a Quranic difference, interpretive difference between them. And this actually is rooted in Surah 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 6. Okay, and this is about where it actually tells you whether you wipe your feet or whether you wash your feet. So it's not just laziness, Armin. This is actually a legitimate interpretive difference. And then here's what it is. So the verse actually says, Wamsahu, wamsahu means to wipe, biru'usikum, which means your head, right? Wa arjulakum, which means and your feet. So it actually says wipe your heads and your feet, right?
Right.
It says that. However, right, so that is where the Shia say, they're like, hey, it says wipe your head and your feet. It's right in order. There's a verb, wipe. There's a direct object, head and feet. So you have to wipe both of them. But the translation of this, actually, there's a difference between, this is going to be hard to explain for an English audience, but you know zabar zair? So the verb has to be opposite to the direct object. So the verb that actually applies to
This is getting very very nerdy on the.
yeah, the word that actually applies to the feet is faghsilu, right? It's faghsilu,
Okay.
right? Because it's arjulakum. So it
Okay,
has
you're getting
to.
that's too much detail now. But yeah, that makes.
All I'm saying is to forget. I won't get into too much detail. But the verb comes before the wiping thing, even though the direct object of feet comes after the wipe verb. The feet actually applies to the verb before that.
Okay,
because there is a way, there's a pattern. So the
nerding
Sunnis
out on this, but
Sunnis are correct on this. So here's this is the consensus. This is not the consensus. This is a conclusion here. The Sunnis are actually correct on this, that you're supposed to wash your feet according to this Quranic verse. But the Shia, it's really hard to blame them for reading this and saying, because, why didn't God put the right direct object after the right verb? Like, what the fuck? All right, so there's although you have sympathy for the Shias and you're like, okay, if I was God, I'd forgive him. I'm like, okay, listen, I kind of screwed up this whole grammatical arrangement in this verse, so I don't blame you for thinking that you have to wipe your feet, but,
it's God that God fucked up. He should have been more better. By the way, I think Uday is complaining that we're not taking questions. Guys, if you want us to answer questions, make sure you tag Secular Jihadists. And Ali, can you make sure that you copy and paste the questions if it's not something we're talking about right now, so that we make sure that we get to the questions.
Yeah, we're gonna go to them. So, guys, just realistically, for the patrons out there, we've got loads of questions this time, so we probably won't get to all of them.
No. We promised last time that we're gonna get to the questions this time. Last time we didn't get to questions. We said this time we're gonna get to questions. So you can't say that.
I know, but there's. We won't be able to get to all. There's a lot of them.
Okay, we'll try to get to it. Just make sure you tag a Secular Jihadist if you really want to make sure we get to a question, and make sure the question is relevant to what we're talking about. Okay.
We're going to try our best. Okay,
right.
So let's just go through this really quickly. Let's go through the additional differences. So that's the difference between Shia, the prayer and the wudu. There's also a difference between the way that they fast. So fasting is the way that the Sunnis do it is the main difference is when they open their fast and when they start their fast. Right. So the Shia fast, unfortunately, is longer. This is something that annoyed me because I grew up in Saudi Arabia and all the Sunnis would start eating 10 minutes before we did, and we had to wait. We were so hungry at the end of this. So fasting, basically, you start at sunrise and you don't eat any food or drink any water. No water either, from sunrise to sunset. And then when it comes time for sunset, at the beginning of sunset, the Sunnis, they break their fast and they can start eating. So we'd watch all the Sunnis do it, but the Shia have to wait 10 more minutes until the end of sunset. So that's another difference.
Oh, I didn't know that. Of sunset, that's interesting.
But you didn't know that they opened it later? You knew that.
No, I didn't know that. I just know the Shia version. But there's another difference in Ramadan as well. The for Sunnis, Ramadan is a lot more festive than for Shias. So for Sunnis, it's a lot more celebrations involved during Ramadan. But for Shias, because it's also the time that Ali was killed, and Shias are obsessed with always crying and hitting themselves and wearing black. There's not that much celebrations in Shia Islam.
Well, that goes for the entire year, Armin.
Shias enjoy being upset and being always cry. Most of the Shia traditions are about being so upset that Ali died, being so upset that Hussein died, and basically that's mostly, and also being upset that Fatima also died. So Sunni is that's why I didn't when I eventually saw some Sunni, what Sunnis do during Ramadan. I wow, this is a lot more festive than what I'm used to.
Yeah, it's like Muharram. They're celebrating the new year, whereas
Right.
we're like getting ready to cry. So that's another thing. Like the Sunniism is sort of like the glam rock of Islam, and Shiaism is more like the gothic rock or the grunge of Islam. Right? They're just more,
Okay.
yeah, or literally death metal.
Right.
So where Shiaism is all about
But
mourning. Now again,
death metal with more crying and pretending to
more
cry.
crying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a but at the same time, like in Shiaism, what's interesting is that even the majlis and the morning rituals, you go there and people cry, they beat themselves, and then after that it becomes a social event. That's where they socialize. They go there, they hang out, they have tea, they after all the crying's over. So
Yeah, but
it's kind of interesting.
there's a lot
It's
of
just
like there's a scene as any. What do you guys call it? Like you have to hit yourself. Okay, but we do you want to?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna talk about Muharram later, right?
We're gonna get to that in a bit, but let's just.
Yeah,
So
but
we'll go through this.
I just want to read one of the comments. Adlock is saying, "Dang, literally a major religious difference based on grammar." Actually, we're not going to get through that, but there's a lot of examples like that where one thing that people have to note is that the Quran, the original Quran, didn't have any dots or any vowels. The dots and vowels were added later. So the divine part of the Quran, according to Muslims, doesn't have the dots and the vowels. And
there's some vowels, but the
right, okay. So there's some of the vowels, right? So the
aleph and the wow and all that, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, right. The aleph is a vowel. That was there.
Yeah.
But the o is not there, right? But so that means that there are parts of the Quran that could mean completely, not complete, but something else, based on where you put the vowels and where you put the dots, right? So, and I don't remember exactly where this is, but there are some parts that the Shias and the Sunni actually disagree on exactly what that word is. And it completely changes the meaning of that verse based on where you put the vowel. So there are many examples of this on not only the difference in the grammar and the meaning of the words in the Quran, but also it would be a completely different word according to Shias and according to Sunnis, and it has huge different interpretations based on what your view on those words are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But go on, Ali.
Yeah. So I think So there's that. Hajj is pretty much the same. The other practices, I mean, these are the differences between some of them.
Oh, Hajj.
Now, I do have to say, I have to bring in the one of the again, only in passing, some of the minor sects of Shiaism, for example, the Ismailis, who are also Shia. They still like Ali. They love the Imams. But for them, they believe in the 6 major Imams and all of their descendants coming to this day. They actually don't believe in the morning ritual. They don't believe in self-flagellation. The Ismailis.
Who cares about the Ismailis? Forget the Ismailis. Nobody cares. No, they're
but this is only I'm only mentioning this in passing just because they are also considered Shia, but some of their fundamental, and they don't pray the way that Sunnis or Shias.
To be fair, the Ismailis were the original Shias, but now they're not that big of a deal.
They're not that big of a deal. Okay.
Right. So, but there's a difference in Hajj. There's one thing different in Hajj is when Shias. So Saudi Arabia owns the area where you're supposed to go. By Hajj, did we even tell people what we mean by Hajj? Hajj is like going to Kaaba, which every Muslim is supposed to do. The pilgrimage, every Muslim is supposed to do. For Shias, there's 2 different kinds of pilgrimage. One is to the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, but another one is to Karbala in Iraq, and they don't admit it. The Karbala one means more to them than actually going to the Kaaba. But
officially it's lesser priority, and it's
officially
not as
lesser
big as a Hajj.
Officially for Shias, going to Kaaba in Mecca is more important than going to Karbala. But emotionally, going to Karbala means a lot more to Shias than when they go to Hajj in Saudi Arabia. Because Karbala is where their Imam died, and they won't admit it, but that means more to them. But when you go to Hajj, and that's in Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is a very, very authoritarian Sunni country, but the problem is that there's a lot of places that is very important for Shias, other than the Kaaba itself, in Mecca and in Medina that they cannot go to and pray and give proper respect to because Saudi Arabia controls it, right? So, like, what are some of the places where people like Fatima's deaf,
Yeah. So
tomb
the
is
graves are.
the
I
graves.
remember me and my brother when we were kids. We got to sneak into when we went to Masjid al Nabawi in Medina. They have a closed off portion in the middle that's guarded by people where they've got little holes in it, and you can look into. That's supposed to be Muhammad's house.
Right.
And we did get a sneak peek into it, like just because we were
So
little
there's a
kids.
lot of places that other than the Kaaba that Shias and it's for their imams and also for Muhammad himself that Shias see as holy and divine. But I remember a lot of Shias say that when they beg, they cry, they want to hold on to it, and there's like Saudi police like hitting them because they consider this like blasphemy.
Yeah.
They consider this shirk, and they hit them, they tell them, and the Shias sometimes they tell us they cry, they see that it's not the shrine, it's not like they think like if Shias, they think Shias one day will destroy Saudi Arabia, they will topple the Saudi government, and they give the proper respect that these shrines in Saudi Arabia deserve. They will make the places where their imams are buried, they will turn them into shrines. They think that
So that is the main place. That's Jannat al-Baqi, right? Is in Medina,
right,
in Saudi Arabia, and that is a place where a lot of the imams and a lot of the sort of like historical Shia, revered Shia figures are buried. And what they've done is like they have bulldozed it down.
Yeah, Saudi government bulldozed it down because they think it's shirk, it's idol worship or worshipping of dead people if you go and try to pray towards those.
Now what they do is like going to those graves and going to these different shrines and praying. This is a ritual called ziyara, right? That a lot of Shias do. They go to these shrines and these graves and they do that. Now what's interesting is Medina has a lot of Shia Saudis. A lot of the Saudi Shias actually do live in Medina. So when we went there as Shias, we did find a cab driver. Like almost every single time, there's always a cab driver, somebody who's hanging around Jannat al-Baqi, right, and just coming up to Shias quietly and saying, "Hey, do you guys want to do ziyarah?" And then they would do it. So we always had this great bond.
Hey kids, do you want to do this?
It's
kind of like a drug. It's kind of like a local drug dealer or something.
But Medina, I'll tell you, the people in Medina. This is so weird because look, I've openly said stuff that Shias are completely wrong about the Quranic thing, like Ayatul Tafseer and the thing about wiping the feet. But I gotta say one thing, that in Medina the people were maybe because we were Shia and they felt a kinship with us. But in Mecca, like the people are generally assholes. But in Medina, man, the people were amazing. Everybody's really, storekeepers were very, very honest. Cab drivers.
Wait, for people that don't know, you're talking about two different cities in Saudi Arabia, okay? Like,
right.
Go to the basic, yeah.
The basic, yeah. The Mecca is the biggest. That's where the Kaaba is, and then Medina is where the Mosque of Muhammad is,
right,
where he used to live, and so on. But yeah, we went there. I remember my brother's jacket. He left his jacket in a cab, and that cab. This is before the internet or anything. Cab driver, no Uber, no nothing. He went around the city looking for us. An hour later, he found us to give us back the jacket. Ooh. And I'll never forget that. It was, the people there were great, and they have the best fucking shawarmas ever.
So let's get back on topic, right? So for Shias we have 12 imams, and they buried in different places throughout the Middle East, right? So when they are buried in Shia majority countries, Shia consider themselves lucky. For example, Imam Reza is in Iran. A lot of Ali, Hussein, they're in what is now Iraq. Right.
Even parts of them, like Hussein's head, is supposedly in a different place than his body because he was beheaded.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. But the interesting thing is that even though Iraq is mostly Shia, when Saddam was Sunni, and it was ruled by a Sunni leader, and Shias for a very long time couldn't properly do their customs, the Ashura and everything under Saddam. So when Saddam was toppled, all the Shias for the first time in Iraq got and managed to do their Ashura properly, and the amount of Shias that actually showed up to do that shocked the whole world, including the Shias themselves, to see their numbers, right? And now Iraq is majority Shia and ruled by Shias, arguably ruled by Iran now, but now so you have. But the problem for Shias is that a lot of their imams is now buried in Saudi Arabia. And I just recently actually saw a sermon, a poet doing in front of an audience, in front of Khamenei, the leader, the supreme leader, religious leader in Iran. He was giving a very emotional, very aggressive poem. He wrote it and he was reading it, and he was promising that Iran and the Shias will one day destroy the Saudi government and will turn these burial grounds of their imams in Saudi Arabia into proper shrines. Yeah, another interesting thing is I just recently came from Israel, in Jerusalem, when I went to the Dome of the Rock, or the Quds. When I went to a place where I wasn't supposed to go because only Muslims are supposed to go, but I passed all the tests, so they thought I was Muslim. But I went inside the Dome of the Rock, and there was this guy there that came to me and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Iran." And he's like, "Okay, follow me." And he showed me the mihrab of Imam Ali, because he thought if I'm from Iran, that must be what I want to see.
Can you explain what a mihrab is?
Mihrab is okay. So mihrab is where you where you go and pray, like with people behind you. Like it's a anywhere it could be a mihrab, like where an imam or somebody goes pray. But what I noticed in Jerusalem, or at least in the Dome of the Rock and the mosque surrounding it, is that every mihrab was there was a story behind it. Like they turned the place where Mother Mary got food from the heavens, they turned that into a mihrab. Where I don't know, Ali did something. There's a made up story behind every mihrab, but they said like, okay, this is Fatima's mihrab. This is so he showed me the mihrab, the places where they turn into mihrab based on the stories on what based on the figures that Shias would be interested in, right? So you're like, okay, if you're from Iran, let me come here. I'll show you Ali's mihrab, and then he took me to somewhere to show me Fatima, Muhammad's daughter's mihrab. But okay, so I have more to say, but do you want to go to the next story?
Yeah, let's move on to this, because we've got a lot to cover.
Right.
We still have to talk about Karbala, and we're going to save that to the for near the end of this. That's the last thing we're going to discuss, because there's a lot to talk about there. But I just wanted to get a little bit more into some of the differences. Now, one of the really popular thing that people like talking about is mutta. Okay, so mutta is a word that literally means joy, but in Islam means temporary marriage. Okay, so this is different from...
This is a very sensitive topic.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic. So this is a big difference between Shia and Sunni. So initially, it was both Sunni and Shia agree it was allowed in both Shia and Sunni. And the whole idea is that you get married to somebody, literally married, all the same rules of Islamic marriage. You get married, you do the nikah, which is the Islamic marriage vows, and normally it's permanent till death do you part. But in mutta, you're also able to set it for a temporary amount of time. Could be a night, could be 2 years, whatever. And then after that, the marriage automatically dissolves. Temporary marriage.
Temporary marriage.
It's exactly what it sounds like. So it was a way to, a lot of people look at it as legalized prostitution.
Legal prostitution.
So they had a problem with it. Yeah. But the Shia do still allow it because, again, they cite the Quran. They cite Surah 4, verse 24 in it. So I'll just get into what it talks about, because it seems like everybody enjoys the whole Quranic roots of the stuff. So in Surah 4, 22, starting from there, it talks about which women you can marry and which you can't marry. So don't marry those women whom your father's married, and etc. Don't marry your mothers, your daughters, your sister. That's in 423. And then 424 is the interesting verse. This is where it all comes in. So it starts off by saying, and also prohibited to you are all married women except those your right hands possess. Those your right hands possess, or ma malakat aymanukum, means your slave.
Sex slaves.
Your slave girls, captives of war. So which, as in, you're actually allowed to have sex with them without marriage.
Yeah, well, not only without marriage. No, I mean,
even if they're married.
No, it is with marriage, right? But they marriage, rape, potato in Islam. So it's forced marriage, right? But the thing is that
no. You don't have to marry them. Malakat aymanukum. No, you don't. It actually says, and prohibited to you are all married women except those your right hands possess.
No. What it means that if they're married, it's fine. You could still marry them. So it doesn't say you don't have to marry them, but marrying them in Islam doesn't mean much because she doesn't have a say in whether you're marrying.
She doesn't have a say, but in several other places, ma malakat aymanukum means that you can have sex with slave girls.
Yeah, but an Islamic view is that you force marry yourself to them, and then you then have sex with them.
No, you don't. You can have sex with them without marriage. It specifically says, and to your wives and those who your right hands possess.
Oh, okay.
Several places in the Quran.
But
only allowed to you. Nobody's allowed to you beyond your wives and ma malakat aymanukum. So aside from your wives, you're allowed to have sex with slave girls even if you're not married to them.
So that's not not how it was told to us in school. But what you're saying makes sense.
Of course it wasn't. That's not,
right. Okay.
Of course it wasn't. But no, that is exactly what the thing is. And all you have to do is you have to search the Quran for the words ma malakat aymanukum.
So
right?
basically, this is very significant because this means that it doesn't matter if they're married or not. You could still rape them because now they're your sex slaves. But how does this? But what does this got to do with sigha? I mean, you're calling it something.
There's a lot of stuff in this verse. So we were just at the beginning, but the beginning deals with that. Okay. But then it says, so prohibited to you are all married women except those that you capture in war. Okay, this is the decree of Allah upon you, and lawful to you are all others beyond these, provided that you seek them in marriage with gifts. So you can have sex with all these other women, provided that you seek them in marriage with gifts from your property, desiring chastity, not unlawful sexual intercourse. So don't have sex with them unlawfully. Marry them before you do it. So for whatever you enjoy of marriage from them, give them their due compensation as an obligation, and there is no blame upon you for what you mutually agree to beyond the obligation.
Wait, so can you explain this? Because now there's different categories of women, apparently, right? So can you put it in perspective? Yeah.
Basically, what it's saying is, and this is controversial. So everything I'm going to say, someone out there is going to say it's wrong. But some people use this verse to say that, okay, what this is talking about is when you get married to somebody, you have to give them gifts like a dowry, and you have to mutually agree to certain terms.
And this is different from the sex slaves. This is not the sex slaves. This is beyond that. Yeah, this is beyond the ma malakat aymanukum. Right. So the sex slaves, you don't have to give them gifts or anything like that.
No. So this is the people that you agree to marry.
Right, and these are free Muslim women. Just talking about free Muslim women.
Oh yeah, in in temporary marriage, the woman has to be Muslim.
Has to be Muslim, and it's not a sex slave. It's a free Muslim woman. Okay, go on.
Right, and some Shia even go on to say that she has to be a descendant of the Ahlul Bayt. Like she has to be.
Oh.
Like I think so.
I didn't know that.
So,
okay.
So it really depends, but that's a fringe view. The main thing is that she has to be Muslim. All the normal rules to this apply. Right, so what the Shia interpret this verse to mean that that you give them their due compensation, then after there's no blame upon you for what you mutually agree to beyond the obligation. They look at this and they say, okay, that means temporary marriage. Now, before this, Sunnis also the nikah, the mutta also shows up in Sunni Islam. I mean, there's a Sahih Bukhari hadith that actually says
Bukhari is mostly authentic, mostly to Sunnis.
Sunnis, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, and he said there's a hadith that says that that Ali himself outlawed mutta because he heard Muhammad say that he was that it was forbidden. And it's a weird hadith because this is what it says. Narrated Ali, Bukhari's quoting Ali bin Abu Talib. He's saying, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle forbade the muta, temporary marriage, and the eating of donkey meat. So just one,
That's so random.
one straight up hadith. He's like, no temporary marriage and don't eat donkey meat. So this is from. This is true. So this is from volume Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 9, book 86, number 91. You probably have it there somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, so
okay. But this is something that Sunnis shame Shias for a lot.
It was just on the agenda that day. Yeah.
Yeah. But Sunnis blame Shias. They're like, oh, Shias have prostitution. How could you be a Shia? Look at what Shias, disgusting Shias. They've legalized prostitution. So like, don't be a Shia because that's what Shias are like. So.
Yeah.
So,
but there are a lot of people who are actually doing this. Like they're getting around, for example, trying to, when they're trying to modernize. There's some Shia societies. I've heard about it in Iran. I know it's happening in India and some places in Pakistan.
In Iran, actually somebody asked if this is actually happens in Iran. Yes, it's legal in Iran.
Yeah.
A lot of religious leaders do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they'll do is they'll just arrange. Why don't you guys have a temporary marriage for a year, see how that works out. If you
or
like
half
it,
an
you can make
hour,
it permanent.
or 5 minutes.
So it's not just legalized prostitution. This is almost like a way to legalize dating. So it's a way to merge the modern world and tradition. So they try to do that, but again, the Sunnis believe that it's banned.
Yeah.
But that's actually one major difference between Shias and Sunnis.
So you wanted to talk about Muharram, and that leads to Hamza's question in the live chat as well. When Shias cry during Muharram, how much of that is genuine? Do you want to explain Muharram?
Yeah. Muharram is a very, very powerful thing. And I want to, if you guys have seen Life of Pi? And I'm asking the patrons or whoever is watching the audience. It's like if you see Life of Pi, the conclusion of that is that it doesn't matter which story is true or not. What matters is what is the better story. That is what's going to resonate. We see that in politics, we see that in art, and religion really has that down. The story that is the most emotionally connecting to you, that has the most art with it, and again, we've talked about this before in Christianity, there's painting and there's art and there's in Islam, there's calligraphy, there's poetry in the Quran, there's music in the way it's recited, so all of these elements, they really, really, they tug at the heartstrings. So what happens with the crying and what happens in Muharram, the commemorating the events of Karbala, which is what we talked about in the previous episode.
So Karbala, for people that haven't seen the previous episode, just really quick recap. Go on.
Really quick recap is that Muhammad had a grandson. His name was Hussein. He went to war with the Caliph Yazid. They were in a battle for who's going to be the Caliph of Islam, the deserving Caliph. Yazid demanded that Hussein.
Okay, let me give a faster recap. The third Imam of Shia Muslims, which is one of the most holiest, most loved figures in Shia Islam, right? And I always say it's supposed to be Allah first, Muhammad second, Ali third, and Hussein like fourth in the hierarchy of who you love. But most Shias won't admit it. This is exactly the other way around. The most love among Shias goes for the Hussein more than anyone else. After Hussein, they love Ali the most. After Ali, they love Muhammad, and after Muhammad,
this is the shorter version.
After Muhammad, they love Allah. Okay, but yeah, that was
okay.
It. But Hussein is the main person for Shia Muslims, and he was killed brutally by Yazid,
along with his entire family.
Yes.
Right. So again, the history of this, it really is in the first episode, so you can check it out. But just the long story short, Hussein was a very revered figure. There's a grandson of Muhammad, believed to be part of the third Imam, divinely guided, right?
And ma'asum.
Yeah.
Without sin
right.
and pure.
Without sin and pure.
All 12 Imams all the 12 Imams are just like Muhammad, are both divine and ma'asum, which means pure, without sin.
Mhm.
And also
And that
Fatima also.
that's the idea that is rooted in what Shias believe in Surah 33, verse 33, when it says God wants to keep ar-rijs, impurity, away from you. So that's why they say the Imams are all divine. But in any case, even though it's probably about the wives of the Prophet, but still, that's before we already talked about. So he was killed, and the Shia think that this is a terrible thing. Now I'm gonna, for the people who don't relate to who are non-Muslim, who are listening to this, think about if you read the Da Vinci Code or watched the Da Vinci Code, you know that the assassin in the Da Vinci Code, he did these things where you put barbed wire into his arm to feel the pain. So because Jesus was killed so painfully, there are some Christians around the world, like in the Philippines and so on, who actually walk on hot coals, who inflict pain upon themselves, who whip
Who
themselves
put
to
nails in
make
their hand.
themselves, yeah, to make themselves feel the pain of what Jesus went through,
Right.
so they can be at one with their, this revered figure who they think that died for their sins, died to save them. Hussein is a very similar figure to Shias. Now they don't believe he was the son of God. They don't think he died for their sins or anything, but they believe that he gave his life to save
No,
Islam.
technically Hussein did die for the Kufite sin, the people of Kufa, and technically
Yeah.
People of Kufa represent the hypocrisy of most Muslims and the betrayal of most Muslims towards the Ahlul Bayt.
No, but
So
he didn't die in the sense he didn't take everybody's sins upon him so that the rest of us, all of our sins are forgiven if we accept him as our savior. That's what I mean.
well, okay,
Like
yeah,
it
but
was that kind
not like that, but it's a little bit like that. He did die
of,
because
sure,
of our
yeah,
sins, and he also did die to save Islam, and Islam is
to
what
save
saves
Islam.
us. So it's very. I mean, I know there's a difference from Jesus dying for our sins, but there's some similarities. He did like it was pre. He knew that he was going to die, just like Jesus knew he was going to die, and he went and sacrificed himself anyways for the sake of the rest of us, which again is very much like Jesus, Hussein.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened is after this happened, there were two consequences to this, right? First of all, Yazid was the visible winner. He was a political winner. He killed Hussein, killed his entire
Yazid
family.
was the Sunni
Now he's
leader that
caliph.
Yazid was the Sunni leader that killed Hussein.
Yeah, he's the guy who killed him, and then so he was a visible winner to the rest of the world, and people had to know what the story was, right? This is so the tradition goes. People had to know what really happened there, and the horrors that Yazid inflicted on the family of Muhammad, or the Ahlul Bayt, which is super sacred Shia. So what happened is that the Zainab, who was Hussein's sister, she went out and she started this tradition. She started touring and telling the story. And this is called the tradition of majalis, right? Majalis is everybody sits down together. It's like basically a gathering. People sit down and they listen to a story. So she started telling the story of what really happened. Other people who were there started telling the story of what really happened. All of the events of Karbala, how his son who was 18 was killed, his 6-month-old child was also killed. How all of his other family members, the story of each one of them, and she would tell them everything in excruciating detail. And the way that people responded was that they cried. This is a pretty sad story. And
The
many of
stories
them
are
started.
pretty sad. Like it's pretty good.
They are.
Nice. Like it's very. I think Hussein's story is more interesting than Muhammad's story.
It is. So if you've ever watched a movie that's just devastatingly sad and it brought you to tears, even though you know that it's a completely fictional movie, right? This is basically like that, but the people listening to it, it's not fictional for them. They actually think this is the truth, and this happened to
Right.
somebody that they deeply, deeply love, like Jesus for a lot of
So
Christians.
let me
So
tell
it's
you, like
actually
in Iran, because we are forced to cry as throughout, like every freaking year we have to, like they force us to cry. If you don't cry, you're a horrible person. If you up with this, you end up not emotionally being attached to these stories because they forced it on you, right? But as an ex-Muslim, it's interesting. I found the stories more after being away from Islam and then revisiting the stories. I kind of emotionally felt it more than when I was a Muslim. Because when I was a Muslim, these stories was forced on us, and they were like constantly asking us to cry, and we hated these stories. But then when I was separated from these stories and revisited them as an atheist, I felt something. I felt some sympathy for Hussein because I was just reading it as a story rather than something that was being told that we have to feel. Right, go on.
Yeah, that kind of happens. The phenomenon we've talked about as well. You just see it in a completely different light.
So, but that's Muharram. What is Muharram? What is Muharram, though?
So what happens in Muharram is, when did this happen? This happened when, again, connecting to the first episode in the series, when Muhammad made his migration, he started going towards Kufa, where, the people had invited him, saying that, we sympathize with you, we're going to help you defeat Yazid, right? And they betrayed him. So during his, so the first of Muharram is really when the whole thing started, the trip started. On the 7th of Muharram, the water was cut off. Muharram is the first month in the Islamic New Year. Sorry, the Islamic year. It is not first month in the Islamic year, which is based on the lunar calendar. So the first of Muharram is when the trip happens, and then 7th of Muharram is when they cut off the water. The 10th of Muharram, or Ashura means 10 in Arabic. The 10th of Muharram is when all of them go out because they can't live without water anymore. They need the water. They go out and they start fighting, knowing that they're going to be killed because they're totally outnumbered and outweaponed and everything. And then they go, and this major sacrifice and this massacre happens on the 10th. So Ashura, to commemorate that, Shia Muslims do a lot of things. The vast majority of them just do matam. They beat themselves to the beat of these sort of songs. They're songs called, like you call them Naha, or you can call them Salams or Marsia in South Asia. I don't know what you call them in Iran. But so they do that, and then they beat their chest to the beat. Like, do you want me to sing one of them?
Go on.
With my sore throat?
Sure.
So it goes like this. I'm going to beat my chest to this. I don't know if you can hear it.
In Iran, we call it Roza Khuni. But go on.
Roza Khuni?
Yeah.
So here's an Urdu one. It goes, So rahe hai sab mere waliya dilbar ret par. So you do you hear me beating my chest?
Yeah.
So you do that. So you see there's a musicality to it. The beating of the chest is the rhythm. So that's the lightest form of self-flagellation. And it's actually quite pleasant. But then they also go out on Ashura, and then there's some people, and a lot of them, they take blades and they cut their backs. They make themselves bleed.
That's a debate between Shias, but the Shias disagree on this, right? So in Iran, this has been made illegal by Khamenei to use a blade, but some Shias still do it illegally. But there's these Shia imams in Iran, Shirazi imams, which they think that Khamenei is wrong to make the bleeding illegal, that you should bleed. They say how pathetic it is that you can't even bleed for Hussein. But there's a debate between Shias whether it's okay to make yourself bleed or not during this.
Right.
Right.
So, but people do it anyway.
Yeah.
So there's self-flagellation. People walk on hot coals and they do, all of that stuff.
Right.
So,
but yeah, let me just put this in perspective for everybody. So we told you why Sunnis hate Shias, because they think that they are basically have missed out on the most important part of Islam, which is Tawheed, with oneness of God. They're praying to these imams. But given how important these imams are to Shias, if you look at all their stories, right? So it's not, there's actually more than 12. There's Muhammad, holy to both of them. Then you have the 12 Imams, which is only holy to Shias. And then you have Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, which is also only holy to Shia. So you have the 12 Imams plus Fatima. That's 13 figures that is divine, 13 figures that are divine to Shias and not divine to Sunnis. But all these 13, almost, I think all of them, all of these 13 holy figures to Shia Muslims were, if you pay attention to their story, they were screwed over by Sunnis. Okay, so when it comes to Fatima, which is the daughter of Muhammad, she was accidentally killed by Omar, which is the second Khalifa of Sunnis. If you look at Ali, he was he was the first Imam of Shias. He was supposed to be the leader after Muhammad, and that was taken away from him by the first three Khalifas. And he was also killed by Kharij. Kharijite was the third group of people that are neither Shia or Sunni, but a lot of Shias think that Muawiyah, which was a Sunni leader, that was a conspiracy, that he actually killed Imam Ali. Then you have Hassan. I think he was poisoned, right? Hassan,
yeah,
poisoned by Sunnis. And then Hussein, which is killed by Sunnis, and that's the main death. That's the most important. The most important martyrdom to Shias is the martyrdom of Hussein, and this martyrdom makes a huge. I'll get into this later. The martyrdom of Hussein, the one that we just talked about, completely shapes the entire Shia view of the world and their identity and their theology. All of it surrounds Hussein's death. And then all the Imams after Hussein, to the 12th Imam, they were poisoned, they were put in prison, they were exiled, there were many different things by Sunnis. It was always by Sunnis. And this shows, all of these stories helps create helps you create hate for Sunnis, because they were always the Shias. None of these Imams managed to lead, managed to have a government, except Ali, the first Imam, for a very short amount of time. And it was for a very short amount of time because most of his lives were other people were leading where they weren't supposed to. But none of these people were lead, and they were supposed to be the leaders, and they didn't get to lead because the Sunnis robbed them of that right that Muhammad promised them, and the Sunni leaders took it away from them. And they were imprisoned and killed, and the Shias were always oppressed. They see themselves as the ones that are oppressed. And this leads into the Shias' view of themselves, and this is pre-Islamic Revolution of Iran. So pre-modern times, because in modern times everything changed, right? But pre-modern times, the Shias' view of themselves were the ones that were wrong, the ones that were oppressed. So if you look at the Sunni history, you see that the Sunnis looked at the Islamic world and they saw right after Muhammad's death what happened. Abu Bakr came and expanded the Islamic Empire, and then Omar came and he expanded the Islamic Empire. He captured an entire empire of the Persian Empire. Like, what the hell, right? And then ruler after ruler, the Islamic Empire kept expanding and expanding, and they became richer and richer and richer. And then they had the golden age of Arabs and everything. And they're like, okay, it seems like we're doing very well. And they saw themselves as the mighty, the people in power, and they say, God, we know God is on our side because we couldn't have done all this if God was not on our side. So God is on the side of the victors. God is the side of the powerful. And this is how we know we're on the right side of history. So the Sunnis saw themselves as the victors and the people in power, and they saw that as a sign, and that they are on the right side of history. Shias always saw themselves as the people that are being wronged, as being oppressed by the Sunnis, and they also saw that as the sign that they're on the right side of history, because they said they built that into their identity to say God is on the side of the oppressed, God is on the side of the weak, God is on the side of people that are being wronged. And that was built into the identity of Shias as the oppressed, as the victims. In modern times, everything changed. We'll get to that later, because after World War I, Sunnis didn't have any leaders anymore. They lost their Khalifa and they were weak, and the West was powerful. So that was a crisis of identity for them. And also after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Shias became like they had a government, they were in power, so they were like, wait a minute, I thought we weren't supposed to be in power, because the Shias.
This part is something we're going to get into in the third part.
When
we talk about modern geopolitics as well.
The Shias' view of government was different from the Sunnis, because Sunnis felt like you always have to have a Khalif that is not himself a divine religious authority, but it maintains an environment for Muslims to be able to practice Islam for the Ummah, right? The Sunnis say, so the Sunnis were always in politics. You need to have a Khalif that has an Islamic government. One Khalif at any time. This is why ISIS wanted to bring the Caliphate back. But the Shias were like, we're not supposed to be in government until the 12 Imam, the hidden Imam, comes back. And this is why Iran is a little bit confusing, because now they are in government, but they came up with excuses for that. But they said no Muslim government should be established until there is because they said you can't have a Muslim government unless you have a divine figure leading it, right? And given that none of the 12 Imams are around, and this is, we're going to get into Imam Mahdi, which is the 12 Imam, but given that there is no divine authority around, then we can't have a government. But do you want to go?
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think we can that covers it well, and this actually is a good segue into
end time.
The last thing that we're going to talk about here is really about.
What's not the last thing? I have a few other things that I want to touch on.
Okay, I think there are two main things. Like there's the hierarchy of who leads Shias. Like Shias do have central religious figures, whereas Sunnis often don't. And the second thing is what you're saying is the end time story. Before we go on, I just want to make a quick programming note. Hazem is saying, Armin, what did you think of In the Shadow of the Sword? And this is the book by Tom Holland. So before Armin actually answers that, I wanted to
we're going to have an entire episode of that. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, so that's what I want to plug right now. So I've been corresponding with Tom Holland actually quite a bit recently, and Tom is.
We're gonna have him on the show.
Yeah, he's very keen to be on the podcast. We're just trying to figure out a scheduling thing. So I'm actually crazy excited to potentially have him on here and have the whole discussion with him.
But go on.
So he's the author of Shadow of the Sword.
So
yeah. But we both love the book.
Yeah, we both love the book.
Right. So the end times, you already mentioned the Mahdi. So this is interesting. So there's a belief that towards the end of the world, right, when the world is about to come to an end, there's going to be chaos. I mean, literally, Dajjal is apparently the Cyclops, this one-eyed figure that's going to show up and sow chaos.
Wait, start from the basic. People are confused. You're confusing people.
What's a basic?
Okay.
The world's coming to an end. Everything's been shot to shit. There's like trans people and gay people everywhere. God hates it. It's really, there's terrible things happening. And in the center of this figure, I'm just trying to get to the Mahdi part. So this is what I see as basic to it. And even though there's a lot of details, is that this one-eyed sort of Cyclops called Dajjal comes in to sow chaos.
Antichrist.
He's the Antichrist, right? Exactly. Right. He comes in and he's sowing chaos throughout the land and everything's terrible. And then what happens is two things happen after that. Number one is Armin, stop laughing. This is serious stuff.
No, B's just saying cats living with dogs, so it made me laugh.
Right. Oh, cats living with. This is people believe this stuff, man. Don't be.
Okay.
Anyway, so then there's
right.
Armin.
Go. Sorry.
Yeah. Then what happens is two things happen. First of all, Jesus comes back. Right, and this makes a lot of people happy because the Shia believe in this; they love Jesus. Sunni believe in it; they love Jesus. The Ahmadis actually think that Jesus was already in their prophet. Whatever, everybody's got something for Jesus, and then this these guys, the Christians, obviously they're waiting for that to happen. Right, Jesus comes back, so that's one thing. The other guy who comes back is the Mahdi. The Mahdi, that's a difference between Shia and Sunni. Both of them believe that this is a God-sent Messiah and come back. He's going to be an example of essentially the perfect Muslim. Okay, virtually divine, the closest thing you can get to a prophet. Not a prophet.
Wait,
just a Messiah.
You got
and
cut.
For the Shia, this is
okay. Go on.
Yeah, so the Mahdi, for the Shia, the Mahdi is a 12th Imam. So the 12 are Shias, that's Nashri. They believe in 12 Imams, all descendants of Muhammad, all divinely guided. The 12th Imam is the Mahdi. And he was lifted up. He never died. That's why it ended at 12, right? He was just lifted up as a kid, and now he's going to come back. He's going to fight Dajjal along with Jesus and save the world. The Sunnis believe the same thing, but they believe that he's going to come de novo. He's not coming back, but he's just going to be sent as a new thing. by God, and he's also going to help fight alongside Jesus.
Can I actually put this in perspective, because it's a little bit confusing. All right, so you have three main figures here. Okay, the Mahdi is going to come. Okay, and Mahdi is the Messiah, right? Which is going to come at the end of times, right? Their Messiah, right? Their end of time figures. The good guy. This is the good guy, right? Jesus is going to come back. Jesus is Muslim. By the way, don't forget that Muslims think Jesus is Muslim, okay? And Christians just screwed up his religion, right?
Muslims love Jesus more than Christians do, I think.
No.
But anyway, no. I think they do.
They say that. They're bullshitting. All right. But also the bad guy, the Dajjal, is going to come back. And he's two things. He's both the Antichrist and he's also the false Messiah. Okay? He's going to come and pretend that he's the Messiah, but he's exactly the opposite. And he has only one eye, and he's right now chained somewhere in an island somewhere. But the interesting thing is...
It's like reverse Taqiyya is what he's going to do.
Okay, so here's the thing, though. The Mahdi figure was mentioned is more important to Shias than it is to Sunnis. Okay? But the Dajjal figure, the Antichrist one, is more important to Sunnis than it is to Shias. Because I grew up Shia, and I never heard about Dajjal. Okay? I didn't even know it was part of Shia mythology. When I heard about Dajjal as an ex-Muslim, I thought that's just a Sunni thing. Right? And then I looked it up, and it said apparently it's also in Shia Hadith. They just never meant Shias. Did you ever hear about Dajjal as a Shia?
Yeah, totally.
But
I had no.
But you were exposed to both Sunnis and Shias in Pakistan.
Yeah, my thing was that I learned about Shiism in the middle of a Sunni world.
Right. So there was a lot your experience is different. But me growing up in Iran in a Shia world, I never knew about Dajjal. Okay, I just knew about Mahdi, which is the Messiah, right? And the thing is that the Mahdi is a much more important thing for Shias. He's the 12. So for Sunnis, he's just a new guy. He just randomly God picked somebody, and he's the Messiah. That's the Sunnis, right? And he's not very important. I mean, he's not divine. I don't know. Is he divine for Sunnis? They don't make him that.
He's sent by God.
He
might as well be.
He might as well be.
He's supposed to be the example of the perfect Muslim.
Muslim. But for Shias, this is the 12 Imam that went missing 1,300 years ago, right?
So he's absolutely divine.
Yeah, he's absolutely divine. So for Shias, he went up to 11 Imam, and then when he got to 12 Imam, he went missing. Oopsie, somebody lost the 12 Imam when he was a kid, and people were like, where is he? People were like, I don't know. So he first fell in a well. He was there for a while, and then they found him, but then he went missing again, and people were like, where is he? And like, he's hiding. And he didn't die. He was always around. Like, it's not like he went to heaven and he's going to come back. No, the 12 Imam has been with us on earth since 1,300 years ago. He's just walking around. Sometimes he's in Europe. Sometimes he's in Iran. Sometimes he's in the United States. He's just walking around, just having different jobs, helping people randomly. Some people mentioned that they saw him. There's sites. He's like
people thought Khomeini was him. They thought Ayatollah Khomeini was him, and Khomeini was such an asshole. He didn't even deny it.
Yeah, he didn't deny it. Actually, throughout history, multiple people that wanted to be a Shia leader claimed to be him. Like the person that started the Safavid Empire, the Ismaili Empire. They all claim that they are Mahdi. They're even
when I was a kid,
it's a common thing to claim, to be like, hey, I'm the guy that you were waiting for. The Ahmadis, that's how they started too, right?
If you go to the psych ward in Pakistan, I remember the psych ward in Karachi where I worked and I went to medical school, that there were always at least 3 or 4 Imam Mahdis there.
Okay.
Who would come in and they were claiming, I'm not kidding. This is no exaggeration.
Really?
They're always there. And then he had supporters in the same ward. They would come in and they say, we're the Sipa Salar or whatever, they were his soldiers, the Mahdi soldiers. They had entire teams of these guys in there in the psych ward. So it's fascinating.
So he's kind of like Sasquatch in Iran, because people keep saying that, like, oh, they saw him here, they saw him there. Like they're like people like, oh, I saw him, I didn't know it was him until he left. Like there's some people, there's stories of like this poor guy. There's somebody, he was like begging for money, and this guy comes and picks up a stone and puts it in his hand and goes, and then he looks in his hand and the rock had turned into like gold. So there's many different like fairy tales about like people claiming that they saw him somewhere, right? So
when I was a kid,
yeah,
we had the Bermuda Triangle was a big mystery when I was growing up in the 80s, because all these ships would go into the Bermuda Triangle and they'd disappear. And now that mystery has been solved for a long time, but at that time, for the longest time, people used to think that's where Mehdi is there and he's already landed, he's building an army. And people actually thought.
By the way, Mehdi, if Imam Zaman, we call him, if he's real, we would like to officially invite him on the show.
Please come on. Mehdi is out there, and if you've arrived already,
yes.
This goes for the second coming of Jesus as well. The invitation is open for you to appear on the secular jihadists.
Right.
By
the way, it's official belief in Iran. This is not like legend, like some people saying. This is official belief in the government of Iran that Imam Khomeini, the leader of the revolution of Iran, talked to Imam Mehdi. Like, so it was originally, some people say like he might be Imam Mehdi, but that was completely forgotten. They never told us that because he died. Imam Mehdi can't die, but at least now it's official within our schools and everything that when Khomeini was alive, he did get advice from Imam Mahdi regarding the revolution. So
right.
So so that's end of time story. Dajjal will come back. Dajjal will lead the world, and Dajjal is also the Zionist apparently. Okay, Sunnis have mixed up all the conspiracies together. To Dajjal, which is the Antichrist, is also the Zionists. It's also the Illuminati. It's also all the tech companies apparently. So it's very interesting. Look up Dajjal. It's very all the conspiracies around Dajjal is very, very interesting. But go on, sorry, Ali.
So I wanted to move on now from here. Mm-hmm. That's the end of time. So the main difference again is Mahdi is a figure who is de novo for Sunnis. He just comes from scratch, whereas for Shias, he's a returning Imam. So that's another thing. Now, finally, we're going to move on to the hierarchy in Shia. So this is actually different in Shia and Sunni. So one of the things that Sunnis like saying, and you've probably heard this all over the place, is that Sunnis say, well, unlike Christianity, unlike how the Catholics have a pope, we don't have a pope. We don't have a central authority figure that all of us look to. And that's actually kind of true. Like, they don't. They have localized figures here and there.
Wait,
they've got imams.
Who are you referring to right now? Sunnis or Shias?
Sunnis. So they have imams and they have sheikhs, and these imams, by the way, the Sunni imams are different. The imams who lead prayers in mosques, they're not the same divinely guided imams that the Shias believe in. Completely different thing. So they have these sort of figures at more of the local, regional mentor type level, but there's no central authority that interprets the faith for them. The Shia, very different story. Armin?
Well, I mean, so it depends on which Shias you're talking about. So, are you talking about the Shias today or the Shias throughout history? Because, Shias in Iran, or Shias that agree with the Vilayat Faqih, they see Khomeini and Khamenei as their popes, as their central authority. But this is actually a controversial topic because there's also a lot of Shias that don't agree with that. That don't see Khomeini and Khamenei as central authority.
Not necessarily Khomeini and Khamenei, but taqlid is a pretty fundamental.
Marja taqlid. Okay, but
so let's start with that.
Marja taqlid. Yeah.
Yes, taqlid is a Shia concept that does not exist in Sunnism, and this basically says that the philosophy is that, hey, if you're sick and there's something you want to know about your health, you're going to go to a doctor. You're not going to figure it out yourself. So in the same way, if there's something that you're going through some kind of spiritual issue or you want spiritual guidance, you're going to go to a mujtahid, right, who is
can I explain individual. Can I explain this? Okay, so the explanation, by the way, this is not a central authority because anybody could pick their own marja taqlid, right? As long as you do it honestly. So basically, the Sunnis hate this, right? Sunnis hate this because they say like, whoa, instead of understanding Islam and following it, you're just following somebody else, right? Like this is just like monkey say monkey dude, like this is bullshit, this is not Islam. Shia say no, Islam is complicated. You can't, and not everybody can be a scholar. Like there's just too much. There's the Quran, there's history, there's the Tafseer, there's the Hadith. There is no way any Muslim can figure all this shit out.
Especially when they're raising kids, going to work, all that.
Yeah, and there's so many rules, like how to treat your wife, how to brush your teeth. And by the way, Islam, for both Shias and Sunnis, is an all-encompassing religion. It's not just a spiritual thing. It's a religion that teaches you about everything in life. How to wipe your ass, how to brush your teeth, how to wash your hair, how to talk to your children, how to go everything. How to do politics, how to govern a society, what to teach in school. So Islam is, they say, it's the most complete religion. It has a teaching for everything. But because it's too much to understand for each Muslims, the Shia say, well, just like you have a lawyer to tell you about legal stuff, just like you have a dentist, like you can't be your own dentist, you can't be your own lawyer, you can't be your own doctor. So given that you understand this about most things in life, you hire experts. You're a mechanic to fix your car. You don't fix your own car. You hire a mechanic. So why is it that the most important thing in life, which is your religion, your relationship with God, obviously for that's the most important thing for you to have an expert for that, right? And that's why you need to have an authority figure. Everybody needs to pick their own authority figure. And they say that it's okay to pick whatever, like any of there's many authority figures, and they call them marja taqlid, which means the source of, what do you call taqlid? Emulation? What is that? Copying? Source of...
Well, you're basically... I guess it's a mentorship. You just listen to what they say and their analysis of things, and you follow it.
There's a good word for it. Emulation? I don't know.
Emulation. Emulation means to follow the example of.
Source of emulation. That's a good translation. Marja taqlid. So they say the way you pick this marja taqlid is that you have hundreds to pick off. I think you have thousands to pick off, right? But there's a wrong way to pick it, and there's a right way to pick it. The wrong way to pick it is to pick the one that is giving you the easiest way to do. Like, for example, let's say you're picking from three, and one of them is giving you a way that is really hard to follow. The other one is giving you the one that is actually easy to do. If you pick your source based on how easy it is, then you're doing it wrong. But if you honestly look at, decide who to follow, and it's based on really honest investigation, then it's fine whoever you pick, even if it's the easiest one. And the Shias say that if you follow marja taqlid, the marja taqlids, they're not divine, they're not ma'asum, they're not pure, so they're going to make mistakes. But if you follow a marja taqlid and they give you a wrong ruling, and you follow a wrong ruling, it's fine, you're forgiven, because they say that it doesn't matter. You honestly try to find a good marja taqlid, and you follow that person, even if they made a mistake. Given that your attempt was honest, you're forgiven that you're following the wrong way. But Sunnis hate all that. Sunnis are like, what is all this following? Like, this is not how Islam is supposed to be, to blindly follow somebody based on what? Like, who picked this guy to become a source of Islamic knowledge? Like, they really hate this idea of marja taqlid. But go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, I mean, you said whatever there was to say. But, some of the other things over here that I'll talk about, it's the differences in clergy. Right, so you have, apart from the four caliphs in Sunni Islam, you've got the Imams that lead the prayer. You've got the Alamas, you've got Maulanas who are scholars, but nothing is super central. In Shiaism, you have the divinely guided imams instead of the caliphs. You have ayatollahs, you have mujtahids, you have those mujtahids that's a status you have to be at, so people can be in taqleed of you, who can follow you. You've got alamas, mulanas, hujjat al-Islam, sayyids, all kinds of different
but
statuses.
It's funny to me that Sunnis make fun of Shias for having majlis taqleeds, because every time when you talk to Sunnis, you talk to them about problematic verses, and you're like, how come this verse says this? How come this verse says that you can have sex slaves? How come this verse says that you have to, you can beat your wives? The Sunnis tell us, like, don't ask me, ask a scholar. Or like, that's what the Sunnis say, like, oh yeah, this is why we have scholars, you have to ask a scholar. But this is what you're making fun of Shias, and now you're telling me to ask a scholar instead of asking you. So, anyways, I mean, yeah.
So this is.
You go on.
Yeah, those are some of the major things, major Shia Sunni differences. We've got about 15 minutes, and I really, really want to get to the patron questions.
But can I just really quickly do a comparison? And this is just my hypothesis. Is nobody has said this other than me so far, but it's just very interesting, and I think it's just a coincidental similarity. I don't think there's much into it, but it's so I find it so interesting. I want to see if anybody else finds it interesting. Just really quickly go through it. So if you compare, two things first. I want to mention two things. First of all, I think the Abrahamic religions, they missed out on pagan religions, female goddesses. And I think female goddesses emotionally was something a lot of people wanted and needed. Like they didn't want just a father figure. They also wanted a mother figure in the religion. And Abrahamic religions didn't have that. And the Catholic response to that was so Mother Mary. But I will get into that. But the interesting thing is that the main female figure in Islam, in Sunni Islam, is Aisha. And the main female figure in Shia Islam is Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. And given that, it's very interesting to me that Aisha's personality was very aggressive and strong woman that started a battle, which is very fitting to the Sunni identity, which was always in power and always very aggressive and always going after it and, being the victor, even though Aisha lost in the war. But the Shia female figure that they consider holy is Fatima, which was more soft-spoken, which was always wrong, which was always just went with the way, and she was this wife of Ali, which obeyed everything she was told, and she was always just like more passive, which is very interesting to me, that it's more fitting to the Shia identity. I know a lot of Shias disagree with this identity today, given how modern the world changed the Shia and Sunni identity, but historically that was the case. So that's one thing that I find interesting. Another thing that I find interesting is the relationship between Protestants and Catholics is very similar, to me at least, maybe other people disagree, with the relationship between Shias and Sunnis. Because if you think about it, like Shias have like relics, right? They have things that they kiss. They have items, like they bring the dust from Karbala. They bring it from Karbala they bring it to Iran as something holy, and they have items that that they consider that it's like kind of spirituality is oozing out of it. And if you look at Catholics, they have the bones of their saints, and they have the nails from the cross, and the Catholics consider these items, objects can be holy for both Catholics and Shias, and Sunnis find that blasphemous. And Protestants also find this Catholic notion of items having divinity in them kind of blasphemous. So Protestants' view of Catholics is very similar to Sunnis' view of Shias. Another thing is that Shias have imams that they pray to and they consider holy, and the Sunnis find that heretical. They think worship only belongs to God and Allah, and that's the only thing you could pray to. And that's very similar again to what Protestants' view of Catholics, because Catholics have saints. Protestants don't have saints. The Catholics have saints and they pray to the saints. And the Protestants think that you should only pray only to Jesus. Jesus is God. You can't pray to saints. Why are Catholics praying to saints? And this is again something very similar to how Sunnis accuse Shias of, and Protestants accuse the Catholics of at the same time. Another thing is that the martyrdom of the Imams. A lot of Imams were martyred, and this martyrdom played a huge role into the mythology of the Shias, and the martyrdom of the saints is very similar to the Catholics and the Shias. I don't know why these seem to all of them go together. And again, the central authority that some Shias have, again, I know some Shias disagree with this, but at least many Shias consider the Vilayat Faqih today as a central authority, and when the Imams were alive, they considered those as central authorities, and the Sunnis don't have any central authority. And if you look at the Catholics today, they have the Pope as the central authority, and the Protestants don't have a central authority. Another similarity, the Catholics look like Shias, and the Sunnis look like Protestants. And one other thing is that the Shias have the 12 Imams, and all Christians have the 12 disciples of Jesus, but that's both Catholic and Protestant. I don't know why the number 12 comes from, but this is another thing is that I don't know why 12 keeps repeating itself in Christianity and Shia Islam. And one thing else that we mentioned is that the Martyrdom of Hussein has a lot of similarities with the Martyrdom of Jesus, and that all of them, both Christian. This is something that is similar between all of them. Both Jews are waiting for a Messiah. The Christians are waiting for the return of Jesus. The Sunnis are waiting for the coming of a Mahdi, and the Shias are all waiting for the return of their 12 Imams. So they're all waiting for somebody to come at the end of time. The only thing that
everybody's got a hard-on for the apocalypse.
Right, everybody wants the whole world to end for some reason. But the only thing so I mentioned a lot of things that Catholics are like Shias and Sunnis are like Protestant. The only thing that flips that narrative on its head is the order that they came in. So the Catholics were the original Christians after they became the central authority for a very long time, and they were the only Christians around except the Eastern Orthodox, but they were the main ones, and the Protestants were a sign of protest against that, right? So they protested against the Catholics, and then we had Protestants. So in this sense, Shiism actually looks more like so this switches. Shiism looks more like Protestants rather than Catholics, because Shiism throughout history was a symbol of protesting against Sunnis. So just like Shiism was a symbol of protesting against Sunnis, and the Sunnis were the central authority and the people in power, the Catholics was the central authority and power, and the Protestants protested to that. So that similarity is different from the other ones. In this situation, the Shias look more like the Protestants, but in every other example I mentioned, the Shias look more like the Catholics. Anyways,
okay.
I don't know why all these similarities are there. I think it might be a coincidence, but it's just so interesting that they have all these similarities. But go on.
Yeah, on Facebook, Yuval Berger is also mentioning the 12 tribes of Israel. So there's another 12 for you.
What the hell?
Anyway, so we're going to get to patron questions. Armin, we got to go through these really, really quickly. Yeah. So again, we have to curate them. There's no way we're going to be able to get to all of them, so I apologize. Some of you have already mentioned throughout. We
Yuval mentioned Yuval in the Facebook
first,
also
basic
mentioned.
one.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, basic one. Muskal is saying, are there more Shias or Sunnis in the world? The answer is there's a lot more Sunnis. Only about 20% of the world's Muslims are Shias. The rest of them are Sunnis.
But God loves the Shias more because He put all the oil under the Shias.
Well, no, not all of it.
Why not?
Right. Actually, He did.
Even in in Saudi Arabia, the Shia parts of Saudi Arabia, oil is under the Shias.
Right. So some of the Shia majority countries in the world, or the Arab countries, Iran is a major one. Iraq is about 65 to 70% Shia. Bahrain is mostly Shia. So there's a lot of some of these countries are sort of Shia majority, but the vast majority are Sunni majority. Another question from Adlock Hungary: what hadith should I read in order to understand Islam generally, but also to understand the differences in Sunni, Shia, and other sects? I would. Oh man, I don't think there's a set of hadith that you can read. But I think that there are certain books that you can read that would help you understand the differences. A good reference book is the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam. There's many different volumes. You can pretty much search any topic you want to. Apart from that, I don't know. Do you have any general? There's so many.
I don't know. Reading a hadith would not make much sense unless you read it in context to the Quran. That would be like years worth of research. Reading a hadith is just good for laughing, but it's not gonna help you understand the differences unless somebody actually puts the pieces of the puzzle where they're supposed to fit for you, right? So actually reading books about reading books that already analyzes Shia and Sunni Islam would be more. This is what Muslims would disagree with me, right? Muslim would just go directly read the source, but the source is made maybe by purpose and by design complicated, so that you're gonna need somebody to. They will tell. So this is what they are. This is something that they might get right, but their sources are wrong. So you do need scholars to actually put these things in perspective for you. But the problem is that not the scholars that they suggest. The scholars that you need to read is actually non-Muslim scholars, because they're actually objective about their analysis. But you do need somebody, because if you want to put all this together yourself from scratch, then you need to become a scholar yourself. And this is like years worth of putting these pieces together. So
I think there are many books out there. I think if you just look up a lot of these books about the differences between Shia and Sunni, you'll find a lot of stuff out there.
Let me find
anyway.
My favorite book was After the Prophet, I think it's called. Is that what a book I read? I really enjoyed this book. I think one book was After the Prophet. Yes, After the Prophet. Read that book. Another book was The Shia Revival. That's a very, very interesting book.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, read that one.
Yeah. So Matt Rose is saying, Armin, can you talk about Zoroastrianism and its connection to the Romans? I think you want to do a separate episode on this, right?
Yeah.
So let's leave it for that. So that's going to be the teaser.
Yeah.
It's a very good
question.
And
in modern times, this has become some political. The relationship between Shia Islam and ancient Zoroastrianism in modern times among some political movements in Iran is very, very interesting and surprising. So we need to have an entire episode on that.
Yeah. James is asking, do Shia say, well, this guy supported Omar or Aisha or Muawiyah, therefore you are untrustworthy, so I can't trust a hadith transmitted through him? Yes. Yeah, that's exactly one of the big reasons that Bukhari and all of these guys they don't have a lot of legitimacy when it comes to Shias, is because they rely heavily on Aisha and they revere a lot of the first three caliphs, which the Shia just don't trust.
Yeah, technically none of them could be trusted because none of them was written for so many years after. By the way, Yuval is mentioning that Azerbaijan is also mostly Shia. Is that true? Yuval has a lot of good
central. The Central Asian states, a lot of them, they're very Shia. There's actually a lot of Ismailis there. So there's Sixer Shias over there. You're going to see a lot of them. Now there was another kind of. So someone was okay. So Adlock asked what the Tafseer is, and we already talked about that.
Oh, you're way up there.
Yeah, I'm way up there.
I have a question from Yuval. Are the rules of tajweed similar for both Shias and Sunnis? Do you know that? I don't know.
I don't know about that. I actually don't know about that.
Wow, you have a very technical question. Okay. I bet you there is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
There is okay, so is simply believing that Ali should have been the successor to Muhammad enough to be a Shia, or do you also need to believe that the 12 Imams have special knowledge? You have to believe in the divinity of the 12 Imams.
Yes.
That's actually core of Shias. Believing Ali was a successor. The whole reason you believe that Ali was a successor is precisely because
See, a lot of Shias don't know this, but there are a lot of Hadith in Shia Islam that says definitely that if you don't believe in the 12 Imams, in the divinity of the 12 Imams, in them being Ma'asum, then you're not even Muslim. Like, it's not enough. There's actually a lot of Shia Hadith that they consider authentic that says that you are not a Muslim if you don't believe in the 12 Imams. This is something that a lot of Sunnis use to show that the Shias takfir the Sunnis. They're like, look, these people are accusing us of not, like, see, Sunnis are great for digging out problematic Shia Hadith, and Shias are great for digging out problematic Sunni Hadith, right? So I get a lot of my Shia knowledge from Sunnis, right? And they want,
and vice versa.
Yeah. So when I look at, like, I follow a lot of Islamic sources. It's interesting because the Sunni sources are Sunni source content are telling other Sunnis, like, look what we have found in Shia Hadith. They are telling us that we're not even Muslims. This is what Shias believe in, and they're trying to show other Sunnis how bad Shias are with their Hadith. But go on.
So Hamza is asking, and I think we covered this a little bit. He said, when Shias cry during Muharram, how much of that is genuine? And we talked about this, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous video there's a viral video in Iran.
Oh, there's lots of them.
Yeah, that the camera is going, like, everybody's crying, and then there's this Imam, like this mullah. And by the way, Imam means different things, right? Imam means the 12 Imam, but it also means, like, just a mullah. And he's just sitting there and doing nothing, and then he looks at the camera, he notices the camera is on him, and he just starts crying. It's so embarrassing. Like, that video went viral. But yeah, a lot of it is pretending, and a lot of them is exaggerated. A lot of anti-Islamic Iranians just share these videos of how funny it is, how much they try to outcompete with each other to show how much they're crying. They're hitting themselves. They're crying in ridiculous ways, just to show their devotion. There are people that just crawl on the ground towards Ali's. Oh my God, there's so many disgusting things. It's just like people that how, like, dogs. Like, they say I'm Ali's dog, and they start barking by saying they put chains around their neck and saying that they're Ali's dog, and they start walking.
There's other rules, like, there's thing that, the louder you cry, the more the people in heaven, the Shuhada Karbala in heaven will hear you.
Every tear is going to wash away, like, hundreds of your sins or thousands of your sins. They're just so, yeah.
Right, it's just pretty nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
It's a religion, right? It's a religion.
Yeah.
So Mahmoud Hassan is asking, do Sunnis consider Shia as kafirs, or like they won't go to heaven because they do shirk? A lot of them do. I mean, most mainstream Sunnis, they don't really. They consider Shias and Sunnis like we're all Muslim, but the really, really fundamentalist ones, they do think that Shias are innovators and heretics.
The right answer is that it depends. Are you talking about what Shiism teaches, or what do Shias believe? And just like we say there's a difference between Muslims and Islam, there's also...
this is about what Sunnis think about Shias.
No. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that just like there's a difference between Muslims and Islam, there's a difference between Sunnism and Sunnis. And there's a difference between Shiism and Shias, right? So for Shiism, according to Shia Hadith, Sunnis are not Muslim. And according to Sunnism, Shias are not Muslim, right? But Shias are divided on this, and Sunnis are divided on it, because most Shias don't know Shia Hadith, and most Sunnis don't know Sunni Hadith, right? So a lot of Sunnis want to be tolerant, like, oh, we're all brothers and sisters in faith, we're all Muslim, all of that is secondary. Yes, as long as we're Muslims, that's all that matters. And you also have a lot of Sunnis and Shias like, no, that's bullshit. They're not really Muslim. They're actually worse than non-Muslims. They're worse than even the Jews. They will say, like, well, like that. This is how Sunnis and Shias want to stress out how bad other Shias and Sunnis are. When Shias say, Sunnis are worse than even the Jews, and that's how bad they are. And sometimes Sunnis will say Shias are worse than even the Jews, and that's how bad Shias are, right? So this is how they're being very serious. So
right.
you'll find different degrees of tolerance among Shias and Sunnis, but according to the religion itself, if you want to be true to the religion, Shiism doesn't consider Sunnis Muslim, and Sunnism doesn't consider Shias Muslim. But go on.
Right. So, am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
By the way, YouTube, that was me telling, please, I'm not being anti-Semitic. I think there's going to be an algorithm.
Oh, I think everybody understands.
No, but YouTube's algorithm might not recognize that. They're going to think like I'm being anti-Semitic. Jesus, this video is going to get flagged or something. But go on.
Right. So a lot of the other stuff that you guys are talking about, I mean, mainly these were conversations between you guys, but I think those were some of the main important questions. Saira was here, and she was talking about Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, who is the spiritual leader and considered the prophet of the Ahmadiyya Muslims.
Right. So Ahmed, we should have an entire episode on Ahmadi.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I'm actually waiting for one of our favorite sort of Ahmadi.
Yeah.
So, by the way, there are a lot of Ahmadi ex-Muslims out there.
I love that.
Ex-Ahmadi Muslims, loads of them, and we are trying to. Many of them. One of the most articulate ones is a very good friend of mine, and he isn't totally out yet, but he's going to come out with a bang very, very soon.
He's just teasing us with this. Like, come on. Anyways,
yeah, he does. So she was talking about how he didn't like Jesus, and he said things about Jesus. So he actually thought of himself as a spiritual reincarnation of Jesus himself, and the Ahmadiyya Muslims do not believe. Like all Shia and Sunni Muslims believe that Jesus was not crucified, but he was lifted up to heaven, and there was a decoy that was crucified in his place. That is one of the major differences between between Islamic belief and Christian belief. But the Ahmadiyya Muslims, Ahmadiyya Islam actually says that he was crucified. They align themselves with the Christian belief. So that's one of the differences, but I think that we will have an episode on this in the future.
One thing, I just want to get my anti-reform narrative right here. A lot of people consider Ahmadi Islam to be a little bit more moderate version, more peaceful version of Islam compared to other versions of Islam. And the fact that Ahmadi Muslims, a lot of people are leaving Ahmadi Islam and they're becoming ex-Muslims, to me is very it shows how even the so-called peaceful version of Islam, a lot of people are like, that's bullshit. So given that a lot of people are leaving Ahmadi Islam, goes to my argument that if a religion doesn't make any sense, you should leave it, whether it's peaceful or not. But go on, Ali.
Right. There's another question about this.
Beej is mentioning it's reason on faith. We can say that, right? Because we're referring to reason.
Yeah, reason on faith. Yeah. He's the guy. Yeah, we can say some reason on faith.
Yes.
He's brilliant. If you guys see him, find him on Twitter and follow him. Find him on Facebook. Follow him there too.
Yeah.
Beej is also asking, did Ahmadis think their leader was the Mahdi? Yes, he did. He thought that he was the appointed Messiah or the Mahdi or the prophet. Now, he did not consider him a prophet of the book, like someone who was given a unique scripture. He was considered a prophet that was not, he still believed that Muhammad was the last prophet who was given the message, a unique book, a unique scripture. He didn't consider himself the last prophet.
So this is what...
So he considered himself the Messiah, the Mahdi, the metaphorical incarnation of Jesus. He actually described himself as all of those things.
Okay,
So
and
it was basically
this is why a lot of Muslims hate Ahmadis, right? Because it's different from other people's story of end of times. Because first of all, other Muslims think Mehdi will come back, and he's not Jesus. Jesus is also coming back, but they're not the same person. And Ahmadis think, well, they're the same person. And also, Ahmadis are saying the person they think Mehdi already came back, okay, and it's their guy, but they also call him a prophet, and this is the most problematic part of Ahmadi belief, because one of the most fundamental belief of Muslims is that Muhammad was the last prophet, the seal of the prophet, and Ahmadis are like, oh, we have a new prophet. Other Muslims are like, what the hell? Like, no, like this. If you believe there was a prophet after Muhammad, you're contradicting one of the most essential teachings. This is what unites Sunnis and Shias against Ahmadis. We agree at least. The Sunnis and Shias are like, can we at least agree that these people are not Muslim? And Sunnis and Shias are like, yeah, these people are not Muslim. Come on, and this is why they are hated so much. But Ahmadis argue like, no, when Muhammad said, I'm the last prophet, he didn't mean I'm the last prophet. He meant I'm the last prophet with a book. We have a prophet and he doesn't have a book, so it's fine. And she has started like, no, he just said he's the last prophet. What are you guys talking about? Anyways, go on, Ali.
right. So, okay, just a couple more here. Soraya is asking, are sheikhs from Saudis also Shias? And I'll leave Zirabad actually answer that directly. He said sheikh just means leader, basically. So no, not necessarily. A lot of the sheikhs from Saudi are not Shia. In fact, the majority of them aren't. And I think that, yes, there's Matt is asking, is Imam Mehdi like the Shazam movie where the seven wizard gave their power to the chosen champion? Sounds pretty accurate. I don't know. Armin, are you familiar with that?
No.
Shazam movie? No?
No, but we're gonna talk about the two figures that we mentioned today, Hussein and Imam. Okay, so Imam Zaman and Imam Hussein really is a favorite. Plays with the imagination of the Shias a lot, and these two figures are used in modern day politics. The killing of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein in Karbala, and the coming of Imam Zaman is two tools that Shia governments and Shia leaders use to play with the emotion of Shias to get them to do things in modern times. And we'll explain, like, more than anything else, like, they refer to these two figures more than Ali and Muhammad, right? And it's their stories just are so useful for modern day politics. So we'll talk about that. Another thing that we might want to mention is, I don't know if it's. Do you want to talk about Dajjal and him being in an island and he being chained to?
I don't think we have time for that right now,
Okay,
because
okay.
we're almost tied up. So I'm just gonna do the last question right now, and then we're gonna have a part 3 for this. I feel like we can never stop talking about this.
Part 3 is going to be okay. So part 1 was ancient history of Shia and Sunni divide. Part 2, which was today, was the difference in belief and theology and practices. Part 3,
which I think we covered pretty well.
Yeah, I think we did a lot. Part 3 is going to be how all of this translates to the difference between Shias and Sunni in modern day politics, which is going to be very interesting, I think. But go on, Ali.
Okay, so the last question, I think that this is actually a good one because we didn't mention them. We were talking about subsects of the Shias and Sunnis, especially of the Shias, like, the Ismailis and everything like that. So Waris Rafiq has a question. He said, why do some Alawite Shia believe Ali is God and reject Muhammad and Allah?
Okay, that's a very fringe view, though, right?
Yeah, but Alawi, do they reject Muhammad and Allah?
I don't think Alawites do that, but I've heard some Sufis with Shia tendencies do that. Like, okay, these are not mainstream beliefs of Shias or even, I don't think Alawites mainstream views of Alawites either. But some Shias take their love for Ali into some very different places, right? There are some Shias that think that Ali himself is the essence of God, right?
Well, this is them, right? So this is This is the
I
thing
heard
that
it
was
more.
from Ibn Nusayr. They're also called Nusayris. So they actually believe that Ali himself is he's pretty much, they revere him above everything else. They don't reject it. I think it's more of a belief. I don't know that much about them, so I don't want to over speculate here. But the only thing I know is they do believe that it's sort of that Ali, the spirit of God, and Muhammad and Ali is all
Right.
very, very, it's the same kind of thing.
We were
So they
told
believe
in
Ali is
school.
no different from God.
Well, I mean that's very fringe view. Okay, like very very
Hmm.
fringe. Like let's nobody should think that that's mainstream Shia Islam. But what
It's
is
absolutely not.
it's
Totally,
not. It's yeah.
totally,
It's very
totally
fringe.
different.
But it does show that how much the love for Ali might go to extreme places. But we were told in school in Iran that Ali is the only person in the world that was not a prophet, but that, and again, this is just one teacher in school. This, I don't know if this is mainstream or not, but it's the only person in the world that was not a prophet that did miracles on behalf of God. So throughout history, only prophets of God had done miracles, for, God's miracles. Anything that is not God's miracle is magic and is forbidden. Magic is forbidden because prophets don't actually do magic. It's just they're just showing God's power. It's not them doing anything. Like when Moses, for example, brings fire from sky, according to Muslim, that's not him doing it. He's just asking God to do it. So God is doing. So miracles are different from magic. Magic is like somebody doing it and it's forbidden, but miracles are on behalf of God. And Ali is the only non-prophet that did miracles on behalf of God. So that shows how big Ali is for these people. But another interesting thing is the difference between Sufis, Sufis that are influenced by Sunni Islam and Sufis that are influenced by Shia Islam. That's a whole other subject. My God, there's so many subjects. Okay, but Sufis that are influenced by Shia Islam, a lot of them don't even call themselves Sufis. They call themselves they don't call it Sufism. They call it Irfan. The reason they call it Irfan is because they want to separate themselves from Sufis that are Sunni. They have a huge passion for Ali as well, but that's a whole other topic. Jesus.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, thank you very much. I mean, Bij's saying this has been fascinating. I completely agree. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with this. Just a final thing on the Alawites. The Alawites, apparently they're very, very secretive, just like I know the Ismailis are, but I know they also sort of believe in a Trinity type thing where
Really?
Allah and
Wow.
Muhammad and Ali are all sort of part of the same spirit. So Ali is essentially, in a way, has a spirit of God in him, just like Muhammad did. So they revere Ali a lot more than everybody else.
We need to do some research on Alawites and have an episode on them somewhere.
Yeah. So Mike says, "Thanks, guys. Live long and prosper." Thank you, as always. Mars, Beej, N. Croc,
and
Matt
Yuval,
Rose, Hazem Amin, Piet. God, who else? All the guys.
On Facebook, we have Yuval and Mathusha.
Uday. Yeah. And then Soraya, Hazem Amin, Ali Vazirabad, all of you guys, everybody out there, just thank you so much for Syra Imam. All you guys, thank you. And Razib, of course, Razib was there. Razib is there always. I need to get him on the podcast. Yeah. Right. Everybody, thanks a lot. We're going to be back. We're going to do part 3 in a few weeks on this. And in that, we're actually going to talk about the Shia and Sunni thing. And how it plays out in the modern world, in the modern, the
there's going to be a lot of discussion between Iran and Saudi Arabia and their proxies and all
proxy wars and things like that,
and the Islamic revolution in Iran and how that influenced Saudi Arabia and how it influenced Pakistan. Oh my God, that's going to be a big episode. I don't know if we're going to be able to cover everything, but we'll try.
Well, I mean, that's what we thought about all 3 of this, and we're not going to cover everything. We didn't cover everything here either.
Yeah.
But I think that this was kind of fun. So
yeah.
If you missed out part 1 is really fascinating too. If you enjoyed what you liked here, if you liked what I don't know what I'm saying. If you enjoyed this episode, do check out part 1 because the history of the Sunni and Shia is actually one of my favorite topics in all of Islam, and I really enjoy it. So be sure and check that out, because a lot of it is about the history of Islam in general.
Okay.
So
Virus is saying, keep up the great work, guys. It's 5:45 a.m. in the UK. Oh wow! Thank you for being with us so early.
Thank you for joining us.
Anyway.
Varis, just remember, I mean, if you're listening to this live, we are going to have Faye Rahman. Faye Rahman's in the UK actually, and she's going to be joining us.
Oh yeah.
This on Saturday.
Oh, a lot of our patrons complain about the time that we do this, so that's going to be a time that's different, right? So
we are going to be doing more sort of UK things. I know that Tom Holland, when we do that, we're going to be doing that on the weekend as well.
Right.
I know a lot of people in the UK are going to be very interested in that as well. But it's really exciting to see all of this stuff happening. We've had a lot of guests from Australia. That's a great time difference too, because when it's nighttime here and on the East Coast, and evening time where on the West Coast where Armin is, it's actually afternoon in Australia, so that works out really well.
Yeah.
And on weekends we do our stuff from the UK, so it's great. Yeah.
And just a last reminder, if you like what we're doing, please support us on secularjihadists.com. Just search for us, and links are going to be in the description once we have the podcast version. But yeah, please support us.
Yeah, do support us. If you can't do it financially, share the links. If you like what you hear,
share.
Go out, put it on your social media timeline. Very importantly, all of you guys who are listening, just go. If you like this, go to iTunes on your phone. It'll take 2 seconds. Just go there, post a review, or just rate us on iTunes. Just right on your phone, on the podcast apps, and just go there and just if you can rate us, that'd be fantastic. And that way, it'll make more people aware of the stuff that we're doing.
Yes.
So. Anyway, we'll wrap up with that, and we're going to see you in the next episode, right?
Yeah. Yes. Love you guys.
That sounds good.
Bye.
All right.